Hi, welcome everybody. Episode 116 of Heavy Metallurgy. Hope you're all having a great week and a decent Friday. We're good to hang out with you on the typical day. And Alan, it's good to see you as always. How are you?
Why, Marty the Worm, you old sly cat. Clever as a worm who conceals his stash. Crisp dollar bills leave no tracks. I'm good. I'm very good. Excited for this one. Very fun band.
I love how you come prepared with bits and stuff, and I'm just left here swinging in the wind.
It's all good. I'm even wearing the gear.
Right on.
Shout out to my old roommate, Stacy, who got me this shirt for Christmas years and years ago when we were slaving away as grad students. So, Stacy, if you're checking this one out, I hope you and the family are doing well.
Right on. Yeah, it's something that's been in the planning for quite a bit. Thin Lizzy's been on the list, and the gentleman will be joining us here in a matter of minutes. Is hell of a good guy, friend of the channel. We're going to bring him out and introduce him in a second. But before we do, we've got merch. Link in the description. I would grab... Well, I can't grab it. I didn't think it was here, but it's here.
Hey, Andy. Thanks for joining us tonight, man.
I'm going to have a dog barking here in a second.
Gavin, cheers, man.
Mark Riddick design, still available, of course. Packaging getting caught up a little bit. Week from today will be release date for the Glorious Dead record and the new Eve record on Binary Recordings. We just put up a new video for Living Rot, and Eve dropped a new track, Into Perdition. Both of those were shared by Invisible Oranges. Go check that out. Check out the video, check out the song, and go reserve yourself copies. And Alan, do you have anything to add before we bring on our guest?
No. Get the boys back in town right now.
That's right. Let's do it. Everybody, we haven't seen him around in a while. His channel's been a little quiet, but he runs a very cool new label and distro. Pat from Ground Zero Salem. Welcome back, Pat. How you doing?
Hi, everybody.
I was expecting more like, pro wrestling kind of, walk down the aisle, some fireworks stuff.
At the end of the day, I'm a Muppet, so there we go. Which is an insult in Ireland, by the way.
It's an insult almost anywhere, but if you're cool with it, I'm cool with it.
If you get called a Muppet in a Dublin accent, it's one of the most terrifying things that can happen to you. I know this from personal. You bleed Muppet. It's like, oh, fuck, what'd I do? I gotta run.
But welcome. What's been going on with you? I know life's been busy and all that stuff, the triumphs and pitfalls of it, but what's been going on with the channel? I know it's kind of in a quiet time. Is that going to come back around? Or?
Yeah, I mean, not to go too far into my own personal life. I'm pretty open with this kind of stuff, and I deal with it fine. People that know me on social media probably know my dad passed away about a month and a half ago. And that's always a lot, especially if you're older and you're dealing with, I'm dealing with a lot of the estate stuff right now. So I'm just too busy to really concentrate on any kind of content at this moment. And also, like, I was really enjoying doing the Monday streams and stuff, but at a certain point I was like, I got to figure out more of a format for talking about stuff. Because I felt like, I don't know, at a certain point I was just like oversharing about my own stuff that I've talked about a million times on my channel. So I don't know. I might go back to just doing more like collection updates / like little video essay kind of things eventually. But right now it's just on a hiatus for an indeterminate amount of time until I also started working more again. So I'm pretty busy with that. So in my free time, I'm just focusing on like putting out these handful of cassette releases that I've done on my new label and GZS Physical Media, and doing the distro stuff. The distro was pretty without updates for a little while as well. I hadn't gotten any new stuff in, but I just like threw about $600 towards Ebullition to get a whole bunch of records and stuff. So people can look out for that soon. New stuff. I got a bunch of earache stuff too on vinyl this time. So I'll have that up on the distro probably in the next week or two.
Cool.
Nice.
Yeah, if folks haven't ordered from Pat before, definitely check it out. Gets stuff sent out super quick, always in exactly what condition he says it's going to be. So a good place to order from always.
Yep, it's a great distro. And what was the name of your first tape? We pimped it here a week or two ago. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
The first tape is a demo from a Syracuse band. Like most of the stuff that I'm going to be putting out is going to be reissued Syracuse stuff that people may not have heard of. But it was a band called Order of Deceit, who were a mix of death metal and hardcore. If you like stuff like Human Remains, very early Dillinger Escape Plan, techie death metal stuff like Cynic and Cynic and Atheist, that kind of stuff. Like it's along those kind of lines. It's very weird and technical and at times almost kind of sludgy. That's really cool. And then the second tape was Blood Runs Black, that were also kind of like the more metallic New York hardcore kind of style, I'd say, maybe along the lines of like Marauder or something like that. They were a Syracuse band as well, like I said. So that's the type of stuff I'm going to be doing. It's not going to be exclusively along those genre lines. Stuff that's going to be a little bit more metal, straight up metal. There's going to be stuff that's a little bit more punk, but yeah, that's what I've got going on so far.
Very cool.
Good deal.
Oh my God, I had a thought in my head and it just totally left. Oh my God. Oh, yes, I just tonight also there was supposed to be a gas masks and hand grenades dive on Thin Lizzy, but I think their date changed. So I don't know if it's next week. It might be. I'm sorry, Jeff, if you're in here, you can correct me, but I think it was supposed to be tonight, but it did change. So there's going to be more Thin Lizzy love coming at you by way of gas masks and hand grenades. Go check out Jeff's channel. Does a great job over there, of course. And if it isn't tonight, it's coming up in the coming days.
Yeah, it'll come soon. And yeah, he does a very, very good detailed dive on his topics. So go check that out for sure.
But Thin Lizzy, when I heard that Pat wanted to jump in on Thin Lizzy, I guess color me a little bit surprised. I mean, it just kind of goes to show. I mean, yeah, I know you like a wide swath of music, but Thin Lizzy is one of those bands that spans a lot of different people and genres. And yeah, so I guess we'll start with you, Pat. What kind of got you into the Thin Lizzy stuff?
Okay, well, I think I may have mentioned, again, if you've been on the internet a certain length of time, like talking about yourself, people who know me or have seen my streams or heard any of my self-autobiographical kind of crap may know that I spent a good deal of time in Ireland in 2001 and in 2004 as well. Both times I was there for like a span of like months and months. And I mean, I rolled with the people you might expect me to kind of roll with during that time. It was like a lot of like crusty punk people and people involved in DIY hardcore and stuff. But everybody I met over there was a Thin Lizzy fanatic. And at that point in my life and at that point in time, the only stuff that I was familiar with was probably just The Boys Are Back in Town. But I think if I'm told remembering correctly, it had a resurge of popularity after the first Gulf War ended in the United States when all the troops came back. So that's the only song that I knew. And it was funny because, you know, I'm hanging out with like these gnarly dudes that are into like Amoebics and Catharsis and, you know, stuff like that. And they're like, oh yeah, Thin Lizzy, we have all their records. We know all their lyrics. We know all these facts about Philo and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and at that time, I just fell in love with them and listened to them constantly, you know. At a certain point, I ran out of money and I had to pick apples as a migrant worker to like get up enough cash for a plane ticket to Germany. And I had a Walkman with a dub tape that was a 2-hour, 120-minute tape that was just Thin Lizzy hits, Motown hits, and Ramones hits that I wore out just listening to it over and over and over again, picking apples for like 9 hours a day. So that's my experience with getting into Thin Lizzy. And since then, I've had a lot of friends, like a lot of my friends back in Syracuse that played in bands, like they were all hardcore kids, but they all like fell in love with Thin Lizzy. And I think it's just because there's such a singular musical entity. And I think a lot of it had to do with Phil Lynott's love of like a kind of a soulful approach a lot of times, but the combination of Celtic imagery and the use of a lot of traditional Irish music being woven into the music. And I think, I mean, their influence is very apparent for that reason. Like you can hear it in Iron Maiden, you know, of course, like stuff like Skyclad and everything like later on, you know, lots and lots and lots of different types of stuff is influenced by them. So that's why I hold them in such high regard and I love them. So
Right on. Alan, how about you?
Let's see. I got into Thin Lizzy kind of very early 2000s. I was a band I just never checked out before, had heard the name, but didn't nobody that was really into them. But, talking to different people, tape trading, the name would always keep coming up. It's like, oh, yeah, you got to check this band out. Reading, and as I was collecting more and more and reading more about the new wave of British heavy metal, they were one of those bands that always got referenced as, a huge influence on so many of those bands, especially with, being one of the very early twin guitar bands in hard rock in the 1970s. Not necessarily the first, but, certainly one of the first to popularize it and, make it a big part of their sound. And so, yeah, record shows, like, okay, sure, I'll pick flipping through records, found a copy of Jailbreak. It was like $4 on vinyl or something. So I was like, yeah, sure, this is as good a time as any to check them out. Bought it, instantly liked it. It clicked with me right away, and just started working my way through their catalog over the next few years. This is one I won't show a lot of physical albums tonight. I've got a lot of their stuff actually, digital, where I would buy downloads of it. But yeah, cool band with discography that's long enough to be interesting, not long enough to bog you down for years trying to find it all. And there's some different changes along the way too. But yeah, just they really nail the 70s hard rock sound. You've got the flashy guitar work. You've got this super charismatic frontman. But yeah, we'll talk about it a lot tonight, I'm sure. But the lyrics and the vocal delivery are what really take a great band and make them into sort of a legendary mythical band. Phil Lynott's writing was very unique. He had this very poetic way of describing these down and out characters in these very sort of backstreets, sketchy neighborhood, urban settings. And he only needed like a few lines to completely sell you on this character, whoever it was he was singing about, whether it was this down and out gambler or this woman, who, man had left her and, no one's helping her. All he needed, was a name and a few descriptive lines, and you were completely hooked on these characters. You could see them, you could visualize them. You wanted to know more about their story and what happens to them, even though that in most cases it wasn't going to be something good. These were not, big, knights in shining armor that were going to win the day. These are folks that were, probably going to have a messy end, and you could feel for them. And that was the other thing that always came through in Phil's vocal delivery, that, he's got, this, tough and gruff and macho kind of thing, but there's often, this air of sadness, a little bit of, loneliness and resignation, that, really gets, that, emotive added to it, so that it's not just a two-dimensional rock band, that there's a lot more soul and feeling there. And that's what, to me, really makes them stand out as one of the greats from the era. So Marty, how about you? What got you into Thin Lizzy and when?
I'm kind of with Ryan in the Northern Michigan Rock Radio, 98 Rock or WKLT. They knew two Thin Lizzy songs, and that was Jailbreak and The Boys Are Back in Town. And honestly, after hearing that for so many years, I could care less. And it might have been the insistence of Zoller telling me, you got to check them out, check out this record, check out that record. I finally picked one up cheap at a record show, and to be honest, it blew me away. I was kind of like Ryan. I was like, don't want to ever hear this band again, to all of a sudden, holy crap, best band ever type of situation. And this show has been, I own 6 of their records. I got half their catalog, and it's been, Saxon, that was a chore. This one it was a lot more fun because I was super interested in really diving in. I've been watching a lot of stuff on YouTube about them, and it's just what an absolute treat of a treasure of a band. Yes, they were in the rock realm, and on the outside looking in, it kind of just emulates straight up rock from the 70s, but you start digging a little bit deeper. He was such an advanced songwriter. Alan mentioned his lyrical concepts, very, very in depth. You know, there's a lot of life in there, whether it's fictitious or playing on his own trials and tribulations. And of course, his endlessly smooth and cool ass delivery. He is such a unique, charismatic singer and a personality. But the music itself, you start looking at it, it isn't just three chords, rock music. There's like interesting chord progressions, and he built so strongly upon the altar of melody. It's just the way his voice interacted with these chord progressions. And then as soon as they added two guitar players, it was off and running. That, you know, those soaring, triumphant guitar lines, dueling lead guitar lines, which went on, I think Pat mentioned it, it just went on to influence, you know, metal and, you know, a whole bunch of other stuff too. And though I don't think they're a metal band, they definitely were in that. They were, you know, before metal was going, they're a thing. And it just, but you can't deny the impact it had on heavy metal for sure. But another thing before we get going, I was writing down all of the albums, and it is quite amazing how prolific this band was and how dedicated this band was. They started in 69, their first album dropped in 71. They pretty much did an album a year from 71 to 83, and they did two albums in 1976 within 5 months of each other. That is insane. There's like between Renegade and Thunder and Lightning, there was a 2-year gap. I mean, every year they're putting out, and it isn't just schlock they're putting out. Yeah, there's some albums I like more than others, and there's some albums that might sound a little more tired than others, but there's always one or two songs on each record that it kind of stands up and salutes. And even their schlock is high-minded, very advanced, expertly written music. So I mean, they're in their own world, and I still to this day, now I mean, there's like bands that are coming out sounding like Thin Lizzy. I can't remember the one, Witch Hazel. They sound a lot like Thin Lizzy to me. But back in the day, they were their own voice, man. They were doing their own thing, and it's to be commended. Totally. And I'm now just kicking myself all the years I denied myself this killer music. Like I said, with the last 8 years or so, I've gotten 6 records. So I'm getting there, but this stream was a good kick in the ass to maybe hunt down a few more that I think that I probably should have in my collection. But anyway, you guys want to get started?
Yeah, before we dive in, I just want to highlight Gavin's comment here, because I think that says, those two words say it perfectly. Master storyteller. And that's, again, what really, for me, if you want to hook me on your band or your comic book or your poetry or whatever, if you tell a good story, if you're good at that, you're going to get my attention and the attention of a lot of folks. It will make you stand apart from someone who's just writing to be clever or sound smart or whatever. Can you really tell a good story? That will win the hearts of a lot of people. And Phil Lynott and company did it as well as anyone.
They did. And I did read somewhere that they got the name from a comic book character. I guess one of the guys in the band saw Eric Clapton reading some comic book, so they went and picked up the comic book, and I guess one of the characters in the comic book was Thin Lizzy, Lizzietin. And the way their accent was, they just changed it to thin, and because it meant kind of the same thing, apparently, with the way, I don't know. I kind of skimmed over the description, but it's a comic book character that they took and changed the name a little bit to suit their needs.
I can vouch for the fact that in Ireland, they're Thin Lizzy, because that's the way people talk over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did want to say, we'll point out to folks, this is a band name I never, some folks really, do hang on the tin pronunciation. Apologies in advance. It's one I try to correct myself on, and I always slip back into the Thin Lizzy. So apologies for that. And thanks to Ash a few minutes ago for pointing out that, yes, it's Lynott, not Lynott.
Which is funny, because I always said Lynott, and I saw something online, people telling it was Lynott. So I will go with Lynott then.
I've heard it both ways, but it sounds like Ash has a good source for the Lynott pronunciation. So thanks, Ash. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, cool. What we're going to do here tonight is we're going to address each album. We're going to go around and talk about each album, and then we're going to give it a ranking at the end of our description. So we'll have from best to worst, but we're going to go in chronological order. And we'll start with you, Pat, which fires off with Thin Lizzy or Tin Lizzy 1971.
Yep. I don't own this.
I don't know any either. First time I heard it was this week.
It's a rough sketch. I think that's the best way to put it, of sound of several different sounds that would be explored later out in their discography. I think even early on, there's like enough of the proto-metal, like crunchy guitar there. The recording is very of its era, or maybe even a few years behind. You know, it came out on Decca in 71. It could easily be, recording wise, something from like 67 or 68. It's kind of thin. It's not really very full. It's their first effort. I mean, the musicianship on it is fantastic regardless. There's a few standout tracks to me. I mean, full disclosure, I've listened to this here and there, not really absorbed it much. I've tried to give it a good ear this past week or two to really pick out a few songs. The opening track, like I put in my my name here, the Friendly Ranger at Clantarf Castle, is that the full title?
Yeah,
it's almost like a psych song. Like,
yeah,
I feel like
I wrote that down. Psych ?
Yeah, I feel like I'm listening to some some weird like reissued hard psych record, you know, from the 70s, when I listen to a lot of songs on here. It's a cool song though. Like the lyrics about spreading out a plate of beans like stars, like total, you know, really something. Return of the Farmer's Son is a harder track. I like that song.
Killer song, yeah.
Super good. What else did I have written down here? Sega, yeah. Saga. Saga of the Aging Orphan I liked as well. There's always these references to orphanages and everything, and a lot of Phil Lynott's lyrics, because he was in one for a while. From what I gathered, watching a documentary, like his mother had him out of wedlock when she was pretty young, and she was in one of those like home for wayward mothers type of places. So he was kind of bounced around a little bit. He lived with his grandmother for a while, but like the next record, especially too, it's big reference to orphanages and whatnot. But overall, I mean, it's a solid record. The version that I had, I listened to on YouTube Music, and it includes the EP that came after. So it's like 14 tracks, and it's I mean, it is a bit of a slog, but there's a lot of good stuff on there. And I think all the ingredients are there too, like the soul and kind of funk vibe and the Celtic influence and the harder influence. I think it's all there. It's just hasn't really gelled into something quite cohesive yet.
Right on. Did you give it a ranking?
Oh, a ranking? Is it like out of the entire like 1 to 12?
1 to 12, yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think. The later ones I don't like as much either. And I like all of them. That's the thing. I would probably put it in probably the 12 slot, I would say, just because it's a lot to listen to, at least that version of it.
Okay. We'll go to Alan. Thoughts on Thin Lizzy, 1971.
Yeah, similar take to Pat. There's talent on display here. Folks are commenting on, Eric Bell kind of being the forgotten guitarist from the early years of Lizzy. Phil's writing style is already pretty advanced.
Yeah.
He's not translating all the ideas into songcraft quite right yet. He's already, trying to, write about these, people and characters he's seen around Ireland and stuff, but he's not quite getting it, cemented the way he would in a few years. Yeah, which makes sense. It's, his first attempt at it. The big thing for me with this album is that it lacks direction. They're trying a lot of different things, which was not unusual for rock bands in the very early 70s. Bands, even when you listen to like, early Mountain or Budgie, those albums have a few heavy songs. They have a ballad or two. They'll have a bluesy number. They'll have one just completely bonkers prog sounding piece of nonsense. They'll have an instrumental. And it feels like, Lizzy's kind of in that same territory. They don't have a direction yet. So things aren't completely gelling. To me, at times the album has, an almost, folk rock kind of underpinning to it also. But yeah, also like, Pat, you pointed out, some tracks, have that psychedelic kind of leaning vibe. This is 1971. So it's very early in, the heavier, years of music. Return of the Farmer's Son's one of the better tracks. Ray Gun, I think, also another one that's, a little heavier. It's the first one on the album that's got, a little bit more punch to it, a little more, rock and roll kick to it. So, there's signs here. You can see why Decca had picked them up, why they thought they were a band to, invest in and give a chance. But yeah, as a whole, it's not an album that it does a ton for me. I can listen to it and be like, well, it's okay. And there's a couple of, standouts here and there, but it's not an album, I go back to at all. I would also, out of the 12 Lizzy albums, I would also rank it, a 12th. Yeah, I'd probably give it a grade like, around C minus. It's a little below average. It's, it's not bad, but, it's still missing some things. They're not quite all on the same page yet. They'll get there pretty quick. But this, as Pat said, this is a rough sketch. It's a work in progress. They haven't found their voice just yet completely. Marty, what do you think about this one?
It's interesting going. Basically, I heard their last album first. It was the first album I connected with. So, and then people telling me that this first album isn't good. Going into it, I was just expecting it to be bad, and it isn't bad. I had become accustomed to the Thin Lizzy sound, and it's good to hear, even though they're experimenting and wandering around with direction, it still sounds like Thin Lizzy. I mean, Phil's vocals are very distinctive, and I wrote down high-minded music. Again, whether you like what they're doing or not, it's not conventional what's going on, although it's influenced by the times. It ranges from experimental electrified folk, some psych. Obviously, they're coming out of the 60s here, and they're influenced by that. They got that spirit into a heavier rock that hints at what's to come. That Ray Gun song you mentioned, I listened to that, and it sounded like a Jimi Hendrix song. Phil's singing like it. The guitar play style, bluesy guitar leads on there. It sounds like a Hendrix song. In fact, I was looking to see if it was. Diddy Levine, I liked a lot. Look What the Wind Blew In is excellent. And Return of the Father's Son, really good, heavy song. And the cool thing is, other than that goofy ass intro at the beginning with the beans and the stars and stuff, it's just like, what the hell is going on here? But I even like the production of it. It's clean, but it's full. It's got a full production. It's very 70s sounding. Very good. I mean, having said that, I put it at 11 on my list. I thought it was good. And 11's not saying it sucks. If I find it, I'm going to buy it at a reasonable price. I'm not going to go crazy on it, but yeah, but that takes us to Shades of a Blue Orphanage, 1972.
Yeah, before we jump on that one, I think, Ash's, comment here is very astute. It's worth remembering that, during the 70s, labels gave bands a lot of space to try things out, and they would give them multiple years and multiple albums to work something out. For those of us, that are more children of the 80s or 90s, that's a weird concept because, bands would get a record deal, and if you didn't produce a hit pretty fast, you were back out on the street on your ass.
Yep.
But that was not the case whatsoever. So some folks may look at some of the early Lizzy stuff and be like, wow, I never hear any of these songs. How did they stay on Decca for so long? It was actually pretty normal for bands to be given a very long leash in this era. So good point, Ash.
All right, Pat. Shades of a Blue Orphanage.
Kind of the same. I mean, it's a little bit more tightened up. I get more kind of mellow vibes from this record, really. Just check my notes here. I like the opening track. It's quite the title. Rise and Demise of the Funky Nomadic Tribes. That's a good jam. Babyface is like a pretty good, like, driving hard rock song. I like that song a lot. The ballad about his grandma, Sarah. It's kind of funny because there's two songs called Sarah by Thin Lizzy.
Yep.
I wrote that. Yeah. Black Rose is about his daughter. Well, it's My Sarah, I think, but
yep.
But yeah, that's a beautiful ballad. And I think that's the thing. Like, it took me a while for the ballads to sneak in And not even necessarily ballads, but softer songs like Dancing in the Moonlight. But if there's one band that's gonna like make me appreciate songs like that, it's Thin Lizzy. I'm trying to think. Call the Police is a good song too. Yeah, I mean, this record's pretty good. I'd probably maybe put it at 10, I guess, or something like that, you know. Don't really have too much else to add other than that. Those were the handful of tracks that really hit me.
All right. Alan.
Let's see. Yeah, so for those just tuning in, we're talking about album number 2, Shades of a Blue Orphanage. And yeah, I agree with Pat. This one, it's kind of similar to the first album, which, I mean, it's only a year later, so that's understandable. For me, the band is still trying to find a direction. They're still trying to pick a lane. And so, you still have, very different styles on some of these songs. There's, still some that are leaning more rock, some that are leaning a little more folk. But yeah, Babyface is kind of cool. I kind of like Chatting Today. It's got that little faster picking style. Buffalo Girl isn't my favorite song, but I do like the way Lynott's delivering the vocals on that. I think it's one of his better performances on the album. But yeah, overall the album, is still feeling like, they're working on it. They're tinkering. They're trying things out, but they haven't quite solved the Rubik's Cube yet. So for me, I'd put this one right there with the first album. These two could be very interchangeable in terms of ranking. I could have put this one 12th and the first one 11th. For tonight, I've got the first one listed 12th and this one listed 11th because, there's a little progression here, sounds a little better. But same kind of grade overall. Still kind of that C-. It's like, okay, it's coming. It's coming along. Yeah, this again is where patience is going to pay off. When we get about one more album down the line. But Marty, what do you think of album number 2, Shades of a Blue Orphanage?
I think it's got a thinner production overall. Sounds very 70s. Feels a touch more experimental than their debut, to me anyway. Still within their evolving rock frame of mind as they expand to find themselves. I wrote down a bunch of notes about some songs here. Buffalo Gal, Driving Yet Bluesy. I Don't Want to Forget How to Jive. Odd 60s rock influence. It's a very kind of, I don't want to say boogie woogie, but what am I trying to think? It's just a 60s rock vibe to it. Elvis. It put me in mind of Elvis, to be honest. Sarah, it's a dreamy ballad, fragile. It's pretty. It's actually kind of an odd ballad. It's an atypical ballad. Very, very thoughtful though. It's a pretty ballad. Brought Down, a step in a heavier direction. Babyface feels more like mid-era Lizzy with proggy transitions. Of course, Whiskey in the Jar. I mean, that's a great track. Glimmers of where they were heading. And you can't mention that song and not mention the Metallica cover of it because that's another one. I heard that song for the first time and I'm like, oh, this is a Thin Lizzy song. Okay. My ink on my arm. They did a great, Metallica's always been a good cover band. I don't care what you say. Say what you want about Metallica. They did a good job on that song and made me want to hear the original. And Black Boys on the Corner. That song rips with a heavy groove, super heavy song. Again, there's some really good stuff on here. Again, if I found it, I would buy it. And I had to put this at number 12. It got, Alan's right. You could interchange this and the first one, but the first one ranked a little higher because it's got more of a deeper production, essentially. So I just graded on production. The bad songs on here I really don't like, but they're still good songs. Is the thing. I'm always going to revert back to I don't like this song. Especially when they start tinkering with more funk down the road. I have a hard time with the funk. I don't know what it is. I know
Marty's just not funky.
I'm just not funky enough, but
I'm clearly very funky. I'm a very funky person.
Funky butt.
Actually wrote down notes. I put them under the wrong album, but I love that song, Black Boys on the Corner. Yeah. I'm not sure exactly if that's Phil being an Irish guy growing up in Ireland and his interpretation of like Black American culture or what have you. But I thought that was a really cool take. And it was the single. It was the single that he wanted to succeed with Whiskey in the Jar being on the flip. And Whiskey in the Jar blew up huge. And I know that, like, I think he was happy. From what I gathered, from interviews and stuff, he was happy to be successful. But he's like, it was almost a novelty song to him, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't really a song they wanted to do, but it worked out. And it was funny because it was the big hit, and it's not on the album when the album came out. It was that and Black Boys, like you said, Pat, they were on a single, and it's two of the better songs that are absent from the original album.
Yeah, but BBOTC, I like how it's simultaneously kind of funky and also like weirdly it's got some kind of Celtic kind of scale to it, as well, and it kind of picks up pace as well. It's a killer track. I really like that song.
Yeah, and it's super heavy groove to it. Good driving groove. It's very cool.
Yeah.
That brings us to Vagabonds of the Western World, 1973. 1, 2, 3, one after another. Again, the prolific and the work ethic of this band is crazy. Oops, sorry. Put you up there so we can see it.
Oh, yeah, just so and folks can check out. Always liked this cover a lot. I think it's a cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Cool cover. All right, Pat.
I mean, this is where they are starting to pick up steam a little bit, get a little bit heavier. Last one with Eric Bell, who it was commented on a few like YouTube things when I was looking up tracks and stuff, like what a great blues guitarist he was. People were like, he's up there with Peter Green as like a hard rock blues kind of guy, and I definitely would agree with that. Like his solos and his riffs and stuff are great. Opening track, Mama Nature Said, it's again like the intent is there. It definitely sounds like there's a lot more energy just coming out of the gate with it and everything. The slide guitar all over that song is awesome. The Hero and the Madman. One thing I noticed about that track, I happen to know that Stephen King is a really big Thin Lizzy fan. He's referenced like going out and like characters going out and partying and listening to Boys Are Back in Town and stuff like that. Look at the lyrics for The Hero and the Madman. It's strangely similar or parallel to the opening line and loosely the premise of the first Dark Tower book. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that.
I had not thought about that.
The title track is awesome. That Tura Lura Lura thing in the beginning is a traditional Irish lullaby. My grandmother, second generation Irish, Brooklyn Irish, used to sing it to me. So that like hits me in the like childhood right there,
It's in the fields big time, yeah.
And then it busts into like, a killer, rock track with a great riff. Yeah. And then I have misplaced notes for the previous album. So that's all I got. But it's really good. You can tell they're and also I think it's the first with their cover artist who is buddies with Phil, Jim Fitzpatrick. It's very Jack Kirby almost kind of style, like 70s comic book cover artist. Really cool looking. I love his work. It's really cool. And in interviews with him, he was really funny too. I really like him as a person on a parasocial kind of way. But yeah.
All right, Alan, Vagabonds.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. One last trivia thing I meant to throw out there about Shades of a Blue Orphanage. If anybody's wondering, because it's a weird album title, they weren't trying to be overly arty or anything. It's actually a combination of bands that they were previously in. Some of them were in a band called Shades of Blue, and some of them were in a band called Orphanage, and they just mashed the two names together.
Yep.
But we're past that. We're on to Vagabonds of the Western World. And for me, this is the album where they really start to find their swagger. Now, they're not hitting the full-on hard rock vibe that they would become known for necessarily, but it just feels like the confidence is way up on this album. They're starting to find the identity they want, which was what was kind of missing from those first two albums. You really feel like Phil's got his swagger on at this point. He's really understanding now how to work these songs and give them that extra charisma. And there's just a ton of really cool stuff on here. It's still a bit varied, but all the songs feel like they're tighter now. They're a little louder. They're a little brighter. Pat mentioned that just that little intro lullaby to Vagabonds of the Western World, and then it opens up into like their first stab at something that's a little bit bigger, has a little more of an epic flair to it, which is something they would try from time to time and do pretty well with on a lot of occasions, including this one. I like the song. Little Girl in Bloom. It's a quieter song, and this is one again where Phil's got that kind of this, young girl down on her luck kind of thing. It's, kind of a sad song, kind of a pretty song. And when you're listening to the lyrics, like, oh, this girl's in trouble kind of a situation. Then you've got Gonna Creep Up on You. It's got that real heavy, dark, funky bass line to it. Real good riffy groove. They hit that, just dead on the head here. Perfect. And the album does have, their first bona fide stab at a hard rock song, aptly titled The Rocker.
Oh yeah.
It's not necessarily the best one they would ever do, but it's the first time that you really feel like, that is kind of a classic 70s hard rock song. And it's not bad. It tends to be one of the few songs from these first 3 albums that make it onto the best of or compilation type albums. Because it's the only one song on these 3 albums that really sounds like it fits with stuff that we're about to get into.
It's great. I forgot to mention that song. It's great. I do like the fact that he also pronounces the word cycle as in motorcycle as sickle.
Yep. Got
I'm a sickle outside.
Oh, I'd do anything for you because you're a rocker.
He also mentions being a teddy boy in that too.
Yeah, yes, he does. Yeah,
Very
there's a teddy boy.
specific.
There's a teddy boy reference in the lyrics to that too. Yep, absolutely. All these little the characters coming through really, really strong now, and it's working so well. This is one album. Yeah, again, I've got download. I've never owned it. It's one I'll pick up at some point. I just never. You don't come across the first 3 albums very often. They're not as popular as what came a bit later. But this album, I think, has a lot of personality, a lot of character, and it's the first time it really feels like everything has just it's clicked. They have arrived, and just in time for the lineup to go through a very serious revamp after this, with Eric Bell leaving and a completely different approach, to the guitar section about to take place. But yeah, overall, a very fun album. A lot of character and personality. A lot of songs I like. I've got it ranked 8th, which will sound a bit low out of 12. In terms of a letter grade, though, for me, this is like a B or B- kind of album. So it kind of tells you that there's a lot of albums that are just really, really good, and something's got to be closer to the bottom of the list than others. If I move this up the list, the things I've got in 7th and 6th, no, they just can't slide that far down. So
I put mine in 8 too. I forgot to.
You got yours 8th too, Pat? Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's it may be a little to me it feels like, oh, I should have it ranked higher, but I'm still giving it a really high letter grade, and it just speaks to the overall quality of the whole catalog that we're going through here.
Just keep asking. One of these days you'll find the right one.
He never misses, man. He never misses.
You got to nail that, Tom, for that to work. You got to nail that teddy boy look first.
Yeah, you got to have the quiff.
You got you got the quiff. Got to get the
weird
tie. Get those vintage threads, man. Get the vintage threads. Yeah.
Waistcoat.
Then try this. Then try to find. Then ask if they want to ride the sickle.
Keep trying, Tom. You'll get there. You'll find her.
Marty, I'm going to run and get another drink because I've already gone through my mug here. But what do you think of Vagabonds of the Western World?
Right on. It's a paced album with mixed results. The good is just shy of great. The low points tend to drag, yet still good. Again, it's that anomaly. Even their bad stuff to me is still good songwriting. It's a clear production. The bass is very dominant in the mix, which I like. I've got 2 stars on here. I'll read those first. Mama Nature said, a favorite song on here for me. Lizzy becoming comfortable with this heavy rock storyteller trajectory. The Rocker, name says it all. Back on track. Love the bass lines. They're subtle, yet interact perfectly with the guitar work. And the energy of that track is really excellent. The Hero and the Madman, a weird transitional track with funk elements and spoken word. It's solid, but I don't always love these experimental tracks. Ripping solo, though. Awesome solo. Slow Blues, Wanderers, throwaway track for me. Very blues-based. So yeah, that was basically my sizing up of this record. Again, I've only listened to it 1.5 times this week. So all these need more time to percolate. So these are all pretty much first and a half impressions. I rank this number 10. The first 3 albums are swirling around each other for sure with the ranking. But that leads us into 1974's Nightlife. And
I actually have physical product for this.
all right.
All right,
Thanks.
I'll let Pat take this one then.
Do I? Oh, yes, I do. Okay. I went on a binge on eBay recently, and I was like, man, I need more Lizzy in my life, and tapes actually in this case still are cheaper than other.
And they
formats.
still work. You have
yeah.
luck with that. Every tape I buy off eBay is a piece of crap. It's
Yeah, dude, you're cursed. I rarely
I'm
have
cursed.
a problem with my tapes being these. I mean, these must have been from a club. This is got a cutout punch thing in it. I don't know. Like these are like barely been played. It seems like I got.
It's funny. I just showed some tapes on our thing we did recently, and here is the Anthrax Armed and Dangerous tape. Here's a pad from that tape.
Yeah.
It just laying here on my table. It's like tapes just don't stand the test of time. Everybody. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't know. I'm a cassette elemental apparently. Like I just they don't.
More
wear
you
out
and
around.
Power, or do you just have good luck?
Eric too. But anyway, I mean, this is their first as a quintet. You got Eric Gorham on guitar, Brian Robertson, who a lot of people that are heavier metal types know him from that one, Another Perfect Day, the one Motorhead record he played on. Both great players.
One of my
Brian
favorite Motorhead records. I love that record.
Oh yeah, totally stands out in the catalog.
It sounds like a Thin Lizzy with Lemmy singing, basically.
It does, and there's a certain Lizzy songs that also sound a lot like Motorhead, but
sure,
that's neither here nor there. This is good. I went into this revisiting this because I spun this a few times driving back and forth to South Carolina to visit my dad, but I hadn't really listened to this one that much. I actually gave the first two more listens because I was so unfamiliar with them. So this one, like I revisited a bunch this week, and I know a handful of the songs really well because this is when we start getting into like best of fodder and like some live tracks and stuff. Make it onto other recordings, but I think She Knows is a great opener. It's such a. I never thought of Thin Lizzy this way, but Marty put his copy of Fighting up on Instagram a week or two ago, and he described them as smooth, and it's like, yeah, this shit is smooth.
It's fucking smooth. Yep.
Like, but She Knows is like the definition of like very smooth, powerful though. That chorus is just a powerful, sentimental sounding chorus. It's great. The title track is decent, but it didn't really sway me one way or another. It's fine. It's Only Money. Fucking love that song. Up there with trying to think of other examples, but it's got a cadence to it that's almost kind of proto hip hop, where it's just Phil singing. And I'm not going to attempt to do it because I'll sound dumb, but it's Only Money is great. It's such a quick song too. Still in Love with You, great ballad. Frankie Carroll is a good example of like, hey, here's Phil as a storyteller. Here's this guy down on his luck kind of thing. Showdown is a good example of the song of the way they utilize like almost like a song building kind of thing where it picks up and kind of gains some tempo and that kind of deal. Banshee's a cool instrumental. Got that kind of snaking Celtic kind of deal. Philomena, guy's fond of writing songs about women in his family. It's about his mom. One of the best tracks, if not the best track on the record, in my opinion. Sha-La-La, I had it in my head that it was like kind of like a lighter song or like kind of
heavy rocker.
It's a heavy rocker. I think I had it confused with like the Ramones song Sha Na 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 or whatever, dancing that song. But it's nothing like that. And Dear Heart's it's a solid closer. So yeah, I like Nightlife a lot, but again, it's kind of hard because there's some really good albums coming. And I didn't bother to rate these before I came on stream like a dum-dum. I would say it'd probably be at 7. It's really good though. I mean, all their records are really fucking good. So,
all right, Ellen, just laughing at Ash's comment. This album is so bad. If it were my baby, I have to get drunk to breastfeed it. I don't agree that it's that bad, but that's funny as hell.
all right.
For me, this is probably, I guess, the first time where maybe there's like one small step back in their discography. That the first 3 albums, I can make a case that they're on an upward swing. famously, the band did not like the way this album turned out. They felt that it ended up sounding much too lightweight. They wanted something heavier, and they felt like they got kind of a sleepy album. And I kind of agree. It's not bad, but it really does lack in energy a bit. It does have some very good standout songs, and Pat pointed a lot of those out. She Knows, yes, really good opener, so smooth.
Nightlife is like, the title track is kind of, you know what I mean? Like it kind of sucks the air out of it a little bit. I think.
Yeah, it's the title track, and it's the second track, and it's kind of flat. You've got Still in Love with You, yes, gorgeous ballad. But notice, what we've said, the compliments I'm giving so far are smooth and pretty, not hard or rocking or anything. Frankie Carroll is one of, I think, for me, it's a miss. That song just never quite comes together. It feels like it rambles a little bit or something. I don't know. I can never put my finger on it, but I just don't like it. It's just me. On this flip side, Showdown, another one, it's very smooth. It reminds me a little bit, almost like they're leaning into a slight Motown, or for those who are familiar with it, like an East Coast beach music vibe, which most folks associate beach music with the West Coast and the Beach Boys. East Coast beach music is very different. It's got a lot of R&B. It comes out of Motown, and it comes out of things like, the Four Tops and the Temptations. And it has like, again, that very smooth, laid back, hey baby kind of vibe. So again, I like the song, but once again, it's in this kind of, laid back, slower kind of groovy, smooth. Then Dear Heart is a nice closer, but it's in that same style. So this album, it needs a little more, oomph to it. It does end up, I see what the band's, I kind of agree with the band's comments that it's not a very powerful sounding album. It has its moments, but considering where they had been at with Vagabonds and where they're going on the next album, Fighting, this one feels like things kind of stalled just a little bit. But they are getting a new guitar tandem in. I want to say they were working with a different producer on this album. I may be wrong. Chat, please correct me if I'm off base on that comment. So yeah, things didn't quite come together on this album the way one might hope. My fondest memory of this particular album was wandering around a record store, probably a Camelot in Roanoke, Virginia, years ago, wearing this same Thin Lizzy shirt, looking for Thin Lizzy albums. And they had them misfiled for some reasons, because I was like looking around, and this really cute girl who was working as a clerk in the store came over and was kind of flirting around. She's like, oh, what are you looking for? I'm like, actually looking for these guys. She's like, we've got them here somewhere. Let me go find them for you. And so I was like, I'll follow you around the store. I have no problem with this. And she eventually found Nightlife was the one Thin Lizzy CD they had, and it was like over like in the R&B section or something. Mm-hmm. So I was just like, okay, thank you. You're pretty, and I don't live anywhere around here, so this is kind of pointless but fun. So yeah, it was more like a middle of the afternoon life in that particular non-romantic scenario. But that my fun little story with Nightlife. And Marty, what's your take on this one?
Did you rank it, Alan?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to rank it. I've got this one ranked 10th. There's a couple albums, that we've already talked about. Vagabonds, I like better. Yeah, there's another one a little bit later that I'm going to have higher than it. So again, this one, letter grade, C+, B-. So we're in the above average territory, because I do like the good songs on it. But it's not an album I want to sit and listen to start to finish. Like Pat said, this is very much where I want to pick, a few songs off of this, put them on my Thin Lizzy best of playlist. And I want to be pretty happy with that. I don't really need to hear the entire Nightlife album, maybe just once in a great while, to give it another chance and remind myself that, oh yeah, it's actually not that solid.
Yeah, it's like half of the tracks definitely are ending up on a very massive playlist that I would make, which is saying a lot. I mean,
yeah, like I used to do I did a 2 CDR Thin Lizzy, best of favorite tracks. Basically I had one that was the rocking tracks, and I had one disc that was all like the smooth tracks. Yeah, and all the Nightlife songs I picked ended up on the smooth disc. There was nothing on the rocking disc.
Yeah,
it makes me want to just like the smoother tracks. I just want to have like a decanter of like Cavassier or something, and you wearing a butterfly collar shirt, and like a shag room. But there, I should mention this. They're talking about it in chat, and because I had to look into this, I was like, wait, Gary Moore was in Thin Lizzy, right? And I thought he was on a lot more records.
He was on an early something when someone quit. He filled in for a minute.
Yeah.
Him and Phil were friends, and then he joined in Black Rose, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
you're right. He was in and out of the band a couple of times, but he was never with them when they were recording an album until we get, much later, like Marty said, around Black Rose. But yeah, he was in and out and definitely involved in some things.
Cool.
All right.
Marty,
Nightlife.
your turn for your take on Nightlife.
Well, the first album is a twin guitar duo. It adds a lot of flavor to the music on the heavier songs for sure. It adds a far more sophisticated element to the songwriting, which obviously Thin Lizzy would embrace moving forward. Production sound for me was far more together. It sounds like they're in a more expensive studio. Very much a 70s sound. The drums stand out, but have that weird 70s anomaly. It's like a distortion on the high end of the snare. Is like, I don't know, it's weird. It sounds like they recorded a snare and also someone beating on a pizza box. I don't know. It's this weird 70s thing. The song's Nightlife. I have a different outlook on that song. Listening to it for the first time this week, it was like Pat was saying, a shot to the feels. That song Nightlife, Willie Nelson did a cover / adaptation of that song. And my dad is a big Willie Nelson fan. So I grew up listening to that 8-track driving around Hoosier Valley, shining for deer with that song. And as soon as I heard the first verse, I'm like, wait a minute, I know this song. And then I'm instantly wondering if it was an original Thin Lizzy song or if it was a cover that Thin Lizzy did and Willie did. But no, it's a Thin Lizzy song that Willie Nelson covered. So hearing that song was kind of like a super nostalgic point of familiarity. And I really kind of like that. That was very cool. Sha-la-la, heavy rocker, twin guitars really take the center stage. I didn't write a lot of stuff about the songs on here other than structured. This album is structured nearly the same as the last album between rockers, funk elements, and ballads, although there's less rock and more of a smooth vibe. And to me, smooth, when you're talking about Thin Lizzy, is not a disparaging term. I think that should be a badge of honor, because they were smooth, man, smooth, and capital S smooth, which leads us to, my ranking number 9. I put it at 9. I probably should have put this lower. Actually, I think I like Vagabonds a bit better, but getting towards getting lower in the list, it starts to all kind of range together for me. But we're going into 1975, Fighting. Pat. Oh yeah, sorry, I've got the
yeah. This one comes with a couple of different cover. Marty's got that version.
Oh yeah, Marty's got the cool one where Phil is holding a crowbar or a baseball bat or something.
Yep. It's also, if I remember right, the only Thin Lizzy studio album that actually has the classic logo on it. Everybody associates that logo with Lizzy, but it's only on that one album.
Oh yeah, I never noticed that. You're right. How about that? So yeah, this I have to rank these on the fly, like I said, and this is probably number 1 for me. I gotta say.
It's a great fucking record. It's so good.
And it's deep cuts too. I'm kind of like this about certain bands, like Black Sabbath. My favorite song is probably Under the Sun and St. Vitus's Dance. Like, I like shit like that. Not taking away from anything else by that band, but probably my favorite Thin Lizzy song is King's Vengeance, which is on this. And it's awesome. It's fusing like kind of medieval imagery with like maybe a little social commentary lyrically, and it's great. It's super awesome hard rock. Rosalie, the opening track, that was the one Bob Seger helped him write, which is his buddy, but it's a great rock and roll song.
Isn't it a Bob Seger song? Isn't it a cover?
Bob Seger, I know he wrote it. I don't know if he performed it.
Michigan represent. Sorry,
I don't know. I'm not a big Seger head. Respect. But yeah, Rosalie's a great opener regardless. Fighting My Way Back. I mean, come on. fighting. Dun, 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 you know, like
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Mhm.
like I feel like on this one they upped like anthemic and triumphant sort of an anthemic and triumphant spirit more. And kind
Yeah.
of
It kind of makes sense if your album's called Fighting. You want to sound like you're winning the fight, not like you're
Yeah,
getting your
it's
ass
got-
kicked in the fight.
Yeah, no one
it's
wants to name their
Fighting! Don't hit us anymore.
yeah, no one wants to name their album I'm Getting My Ass Beat.
Yes. Like instead of fighting, it's called like running away.
losing.
Recoiling in fear. Yeah.
Note to self: learn how to fight. But
Cowering.
sorry, dirty work, anybody? But anyhow, but yeah, the Wild One again. Like it's so amazing to me how he wrote so many songs that were okay. They toured with Seeger and he didn't play it, so they started playing it. Cool.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Ninth Circle. Thanks for clearing that up.
And it really sounds like a Thin Lizzy song. I mean,
It's
Oh,
fits
absolutely.
everything,
it's
Um,
perfect.
but as what I was about to say about the Wild One is that like it feel I guess it's a good definition is power ballad where it's like it's got almost sort of like sentimental and ballady kind of elements, but it's very driving and heavy at the same time. That's what I get that from that anyway. Yeah, the Freedom Song too. It's also another great like triumphant kind of jam. I don't know. I can't really articulate too well how much I love this, but I love this a lot. Like this is number one for me easily. So
Number one for Pat.
There you go.
There it is.
Nice, interesting.
All right, Alan.
Let's see, so yeah, this is the first one where I think you can claim, it's a bona fide hard rock 70s album, start to finish. Not just a couple of songs, here or there. And yeah, it's got a, especially for me, side A is really strong on this one. Rosalie, the cover is a really nice opening tune. Thanks again, Ninth Circle, for clearing that one up for us. Let's see, For Those Who Love to Live is kind of a little bit of a tongue twister on a title, but still not a bad song. Suicide is got kind of a cool, heavy vibe to it. Wild One is, one of their best songs up to this point in their catalog.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
great example of the dual local.
Yeah.
dual
Yeah,
leads.
exactly. Yeah, and yeah, like you described it. Yeah, it's got that little bit of a power ballad kind of feel to it. Is good. And yes, Fighting My Way Back. Very triumphant. Great. Riff backing that up. Very super catchy. So yeah, the A side, really strong. And then side B had good songs on it too. It just doesn't feel quite as solid to me as side one. This may be a case where I just played side one way too many times and never played side two enough. But trivia fact for side two, the track Silver Dollar, it's a Brian Robertson song, and it's one of only about 3 Thin Lizzy originals that doesn't have a writing credit for Phil. Phil wrote or co-wrote almost every Thin Lizzy song. Silver Dollar is one of only about 3 exceptions to that. For whatever that's worth. I'm not saying it's a one of the best songs or one of the worst, but yeah, it's one of the only ones completely penned by one of the other guys. But then you also have, Ballad of a Hard Man. That's a Scott Gorham track. So yeah, a good album. At this point, while people may not have realized at the time, Thin Lizzy had kind of arrived at the sound they were going to become legendary for. I've got this one ranked. Where did I rank this one tonight? I've got this one ranked 6th, kind of right in the middle. They've got so many good albums yet to come that I have to rank before this. There are a few of the later albums, though, that I will rank lower than this one. So, yeah, this one kind of right there in the middle of the pack. And in terms of a letter grade, it would be in that B, maybe B minus, but trending more towards a solid B on this album. Yeah, it's a good outing. It is one I know that there was a time where I kind of burned myself out playing this album too much. And kind of had to, step away from it for, a long time. I didn't want to hear it for a long time, but I've come back around on it. So yeah, very good album. Marty, I know you dig fighting. Let's find out how much you dig fighting.
It's my number 2, straight up. My notes. Wow! Exclamation point. Massive jump in songwriting quality. The guitars add so much flavor and light. They embrace their sound on this. A lot of potential hits on here. Rosalie, I just learned recently-ish that it was a Bob Seger cover, which surprised me because it sounds so Thin Lizzy. and it made their set lists live. Great opener for that. For those who love to live, soaring guitar lines and that smooth groove that is the essence of Thin Lizzy really takes center stage on here. Wild One, let those dueling harmonies soar, emotive and great song. I love every song on this record, and it should have been my number one, but my number one, even though this is a more consistent record, A and B side, I think my number one record suffers from being a little front heavy, but the songs on the front half are so good. This has to be second for me. But yeah, I just picked this up a couple weeks ago and I really can't stop listening to it. I've turned a couple friends onto it as well. So my work here is done. I love this record. It's fantastic. This to me is the first straight up true Thin Lizzy record.
Yeah.
This is where everything even the dueling guitar harmonies, they're not simple notes. They're not simple. There's a lot of like tricky guitar stuff going on. They're in lockstep with it's impressive. It's really, they really focused on this and created something really special. It's a great record, which leads us to a very busy year for Thin Lizzy. We got 2 records come out in 1976. The first being, I believe, Jailbreak, Pat, which I have a record of that.
As do I.
Oh, go for it. Yep.
The funniest thing about, like, I don't know if other people saw this or if your friends were making this dumb comment or if it was going around, but I remember a few years ago, randomly on social media, a bunch of people were like, "You ever listen to the lyrics to Jailbreak? Like, tonight there's going to be a jailbreak somewhere in the town. Well, how about at the jail? Unless there's more than one jail in that town." Well, if you read the whole premise of the song on the back, it's like a sci-fi thing where like it's like a prison complex, kind of a dystopian kind of deal where there's multiple prisons. So yeah, there's more than one prison.
Dude,
Learn how to read.
I can't.
Those are the same people.
can't
Those
be
are the same
shackled by
people that
words.
listen to Born in the USA and start chanting, thinking it's some kind of great American number one kind of anthem. It's the same
exactly.
exact people. I guarantee you.
So anyway,
Born in the USA, yeah, man. It's just like, dude, it's a song about the Vietnam War and veterans being shit on coming home. But, yeah, man.
boss.
People. America rules.
I've also heard like comparisons to maybe not like Phil Lynott's vocal approach, but his like lyrical approach and stuff to Bruce Springsteen. But I don't listen to enough Bruce Springsteen to really draw that parallel.
I don't know. I've heard that too. I don't know how much I buy into that. I've gotten a little more into Springsteen's older stuff in recent years. I mean, there's that same take on wanting to write about, the blue collar aspects.
Yeah,
of society, sure. And, kind of, telling the tales of down and out people. So I get that comparison. I think maybe they were drawing, from the same kind of inspiration, but not necessarily influencing one another would be my take on it. But
I'm sure they probably knew each other and everything, but
yeah.
Cover art. It's this Jim Fitzpatrick guy again. I don't know what this dude did other than Thin Lizzy records. Maybe somebody in chat might know if he did comics or if he did
looks
other
like
albums.
comics. Yeah.
I mean, again, like very Jack Kirby inspired here. Very cool. But
that's a fantastic 4 cover.
I would probably put this in maybe 4. I'd say only because like I'm so tired of hearing Jailbreak. It's a great song.
It's a great song. Yeah.
I just hard like classic rock radio growing up in the 90s and stuff. You heard it constantly. But Running Back, great song. Kind of like sentimental, sort of ballady. Romeo, I love the lyrics for Romeo. Poor old Romeo sitting all on his onio.
Yeah.
Chef's kiss. Warriors, great hard rock, kind of proto-metal song. Boys Are Back in Town. Same deal. Not really into hearing that ever again. But then you got Cowboy Song and Emerald as the last 2, and that's a 1-2 punch of 2 kick-ass songs. It's funny, the first time I ever heard Cowboy Song was in the early days of file sharing, and I just moved to Maine after I'd been in Ireland, so I was downloading all this Thin Lizzy stuff, and it was on LimeWire, so it wasn't like whole albums, it was individual songs. and somebody had made a special edit of a cowboy song where the entire like soft intro stuff is cut away, so it goes right into the heavy fast beat part after it. But instead of the softer intro, they cut all that out, and instead there was a Eddie Murphy sample from I don't know if it's from Beverly Hills Cop or 48 Hours. I can't remember. I haven't seen those movies in a long time, but it's just Eddie Murphy saying, "I don't like white people. Y'all are rednecks. I hate rednecks." And then it just goes into the heavy part from Cowboy Song. And I wish I could find that version of it. It's great. But that's obviously an awesome song. And I mean, kind of scattered throughout their discography, Phil Lynott had a lot of references to him, and Lemmy both seem to have like a fascination with the American West and Western movies and stuff like that. And another example of like something that feels like very proto Iron Maiden, I feel like.
Well, think about their age and the time it come up. What was on TV?
Yeah.
I mean, American culture. Exactly. I mean, old Westerns, Gunsmoke.
This is, the Gunsmoke era.
I mean, those guys probably grew up watching that crap on BBC. It was probably on both. So
yeah, it's probably on their 2 channels, like constantly.
Yeah. And they just you get a dig. I mean, I go to my parents, my dad's still watching that stuff. It's ingrained, it's like a nostalgia thing for us with music. It works that way too.
Oh yeah.
And then Emerald, which is, I mean, that's in my probably top 5, along with King's Vengeance. And again, you've got that heavy Celtic influence. Again, very proto metal. I want to say Skyclad covered it. A couple other bands have covered it, I think. But it is, I mean, down from the hills came the marching men with their shields and their swords. Like anybody who's rolled a D20 should fucking appreciate that shit. I mean, that's a bop right there. So.
Did you rank this one?
Yeah, 4.
4?
Oh, wait.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say 4.
Okay.
We'll go with 4.
Alan.
Let's see. Yeah, lots of good things. Most people, if they only know one Thin Lizzy album, this is the one they know, because yes, it's got, the 2 big hits on it that we've all heard a million times. But it is a very solid album. Beyond that, there's lots of good stuff on here. Sorry, just checking up on one little thing here to the side. But yeah, let's go through the track list real quick. Jailbreak, next to Smoke on the Water, that may be one of the most recognizable chords that was recorded during the entire decade. That is dun 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 dun.
Smooth groove.
Dun, 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 dun. And yeah, I mean, it's heavy, it's dark, but it's got that smoothness to it. It works fine. Track 2 is a misfire for me. I've never been able to get into Angel from the Coast. It kind of just, it's not that it sucks. It just, you go from one of the classic iconic 70s songs to this kind of throwaway track, which is like, weird. Yeah. But the album gets right back on track. Running Back really shows that, the band could write very good in sort of the pop realm. This song has a very simple, light, bouncy, catchy structure to it, where it could have been on, FM pop radio, not hard rock, tune, just, a much simpler pop rock tune. And it's brilliant and it works great. Love it. Everything Pat said about, Romeo and the Lonely Girl is spot on. It's just, it's a clever song. It's a well put together song, well performed, and lyrically, I mean, if he wasn't there before, Lynott has, completely come of age, on this one. Just, for, some of the, lyrics, here, for all his good looks, there were scars, that he took, and a lesson to be learned. Never judge lovers by a good looking cover. The lover might be spurned. Shit. Yeah. That's just, that's brilliant. That's, William Shakespeare material right there.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with that song. The song wraps up, with Warriors. Yeah. One of their heavier ones. Like, Pat said, this is one that probably had an influence on some of these kids that would be picking up guitars in about 4 or 5 years and starting new wave of British heavy metal bands. Let's see, side 2, Boys Are Back in Town. None of us have to hear it again, but yeah, it's a classic for a reason. Fight or Fall is one of those songs that always just kind of glides by at this point for me. I never zero in on it. Cowboy Song, I think Gavin mentioned it earlier. This was the song that made him kind of fall in love with the band. Same for me. This was the first Thin Lizzy album I heard. And so like the first time I'm playing it, yes, I hear the hit, checking out some of these new songs that are kind of cool, hear the second hit, on the side B. And then I got to that cowboy song, and I would just sit and play that song over and over and over, and it would be stuck in my head for days at a time. Great tune. And yeah, like Marty was saying, Western culture was still kind of a big thing at the time. This is only 76. Like Marty's dad, my dad, yes, grew up on, cowboy heroes and, Westerns and stuff like that. That stuff, kind of got replaced as you moved through the 70s. And I think, my Cracker
the
Barrel pop culture
Rockford Files.
Well, a lot of it got replaced with once we, with the moon landing, and you got, sci-fi became more and more of a thing because, kids, had now seen that, and all of a sudden, cowboys on the Western frontier, that wasn't the frontier. Astronauts in space, was kind of, the new frontier. And after that, as you move into the the late 70s and the 80s, the cowboy stuff, it's never gone away. There's always a market for it, but it becomes more and more rare. Whereas, your Star Treks, your Star Wars, all that stuff starts to, become what, people are thinking of as, the big exciting stuff. And it's funny because today, they launch a rocket and nobody even knows about it. Most people couldn't name a single astronaut on the current NASA roster. Those guys were like, demigods, coming back off those Apollo missions and stuff. They were the most famous people on Earth, not named John Lennon. But yeah, so, it makes sense that you still have, a cowboy, a Western theme song. And it makes sense that, yeah, Phil Lynott and Lemmy and these guys, they grew up, I'm sure, watching all kinds of, B Westerns, John Wayne on the big screen, Whip Wilson and Roy Rogers, on the smaller screens.
I mean, look at Lemmy. He wore the hat and the cowboy boots. I mean, he embraced it. Yeah. He embraced it.
Yeah, even today, I mean, there's that cowboy aesthetic still definitely appeals to folks, that are going for that maverick, renegade kind of, persona, that still has a lot of appeal. There's still a lot of, social, psychological value in that particular look, even if it's not where people look to for, their pop culture, funness so much today. Yeah, and then it wraps up with Emerald, which here's another one where they're taking a stab at a more, a bigger, more kind of epic track, and more of a grand composition. And hey, they nail it yet again, just like they did on Vagabonds, and just like they will in the future. So, a really excellent album. There's only a couple of tracks on it that I don't love. This one for me ranks 4th. And again, it feels a little odd having it so low. In terms of a grade, I would give this like an A. If I'm being a real, if it's one of those days where the kids are driving you nuts in the classroom and you're just pissed off, your boss, maybe you give it an A- because you're grading too hard. But it's, really a fantastic album. One of those cases where the album really does deserve the hype and the legendary status that it's acquired over time. I still only have it ranked 4th. There's 3 albums I want to put higher than this, which is nuts. But it really speaks to the quality of Lizzy's catalog. I've gushed about it enough. Marty, your turn to pick this one apart for us.
Well, this one came out in March. Melodically charged. Roll out the hit machine, basically. They continue with a pro production. Jailbreak, heavy opener, still appears on Northern Michigan Rock Radio probably 6 times a day. And you know what? That break, the music break in that song is, and you can't, even though I'm sick to death of the song, it is an awesome, well-written song. Super smooth groove, heavy, good stuff. Warriors, great guitar lead breakdowns. My favorite song on here is Emerald. It's a fantastic song, dark and smart, proto-metal in sonic weight and subject matter. The twin guitar riff is a major hook of the song. And then they attempt to swing for the bleachers. They're going for the hits. And like Alan mentioned, there's a definite pop thing going on some of these songs. Running Back, Romeo and the Lonely Girl, Boys Are Back in Town wasn't the obvious hit. And even though I'm sick to death of that song as well, it's a cool story and it's a cool song. I'm just sick to death of it. And of course, Cowboy Song rules, even though it has kind of maybe a little more commercial vibe to it. It's an awesome song. It's a solid album, and it gave the band even more exposure, which I can only go on what I heard about Kiss. Kiss put out Hotter Than Hell and Dressed to Kill in the same year. They got back from a tour that didn't go all that great, and the record sales sucked. And the record label said, either we're done or you need to make another album and get back out on the road. So they pulled a bunch of crap from old songs from old bands and slopped some stuff together. And I don't know if this is just Thin Lizzy trying to capitalize on some success, but 7 months later, in October of 1976, Johnny the Fox comes out. Oh wait, I got to rank it. Jailbreak 5 for me. It's a good record. Nope, I got it on record. I got the vinyl of that.
I got it too. I got both. Multiple formats. Let's go. Hey,
where's the 8-track?
Oh, dude, I'm friends with a guy on Facebook that's legitimately collecting 8-tracks, and I'm like, okay, that's
King Foley has got a massive 8-track collection. Massive.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That tracks.
Yeah, that does track.
It tracks 8 times. As long as it doesn't get too humid, too hot, too cold, or too anything.
Yeah. Nothing like having your favorite song on the album click over, click, as it changes program. God, I used to hate that. Annoying. Anyway.
I love this album a lot. Not as much as Fighting, but there are some very huge standout tracks to me on this. Would I put this at number 2? See, I have a lot of sentimentality connected to like specific songs, and then I look at other song titles and I'm like, wait, how does Rocky go again? I don't know. But Johnny, I mean, the opening track, again, like quality storytelling, somebody robbing a bank to fuel their drug habit. I mean, dark stuff. I don't know if Phil Lynott was getting into heroin yet when this was recorded, and I don't know if he was speaking from a place of experience, but it definitely was like a great narrative, about like a tragic anti-hero kind of deal.
Yeah.
Great, powerful, melodic rock song. Don't Believe a Word, another great, up-tempo kind of rocker. Fool's Gold, I love how it's, again, a smooth, bordering on ballady kind of track, but there's also those twin leads that are so catchy on that. Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed, and this is a great example of Thin Lizzy getting funky and also telling a story. I've had that with like an inside joke with friends where people, like one guy will come up to the other and be like, "Hey, I'm Johnny the Fox, Jimmy the Weed, good to meet you," like that kind of thing. But yeah, a good example. Like, I need to read more into it, like what kind of stuff Phil Lynott was listening to. Like, was he must have been listening to Curtis Mayfield and shit. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of that shows.
That would make sense.
I mean, I don't know. I'm just speculating, but Massacre, like I recently made a mixed. I actually just picked up this vinyl copy at Sorry State Records in Raleigh, North Carolina. Shout out to that awesome record store. And I got this for a good price. It's a nice copy. But I was making a mixtape for a friend of mine that's just all my recent stuff that I've gotten in, that I've purchased on vinyl in the past 3 or 4 months. It was enough to populate a 90-minute mixtape. It really says something about my spending habits. But he's more of a metalhead that appreciates, like a lot of metalheads that are getting a little bit older, like appreciates getting into new wave of British heavy metal and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't know if he's into Thin Lizzy yet. What track from this record will I put on a metalhead's mixtape, like a dyed in the wool metalhead? And I'm like, Massacre. Definitely, it's going to be Massacre. So that's a great track. And it's weird because I have so many good memories of this, but like out of a lineup, the other songs on this, I'm sure like I'll remember some of the lyrics or how they go when I hear them, but I don't, have anything particular to say about any of the other songs on this. But the songs that I mentioned are all very huge, like standouts to me. Especially the title track and Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed.
Did you rank it?
Man, that's a tough call. I would say, despite the fact that I'm like, yeah, half the songs, I'd probably say it would be number 3 for me.
Okay. Seems to be a fan favorite. Alan.
Yeah, definitely a fan favorite. And it's funny because, yeah, all the hits are on the previous album. But yeah, this is one I think that a lot of fans gravitate to. The band's at their prime right around this time. From this point, this mid to late 70s period, folks have been saying it in the chat all night, and they could not be more correct. This is the golden age of Thin Lizzy. And this is the album that's got all the good qualities of Jailbreak, but it doesn't have those two songs that you've heard a million times. So
Right.
maybe it's a little easier to go back and replay. But yeah, Pat's done a good breakdown on the track list. Let's see. Yeah, Johnny, perfect example of the storytelling here of a down and out person who's pretty much at the end of the line. By the end of this song, they're gunned down dead. Rocky, there's a reason you can't remember Rocky, Pat. It's a misfire. It's not a good song. It's like Cocky Rocky is one of the lyrics. It's like, come on, you can do better than that. It's funny because it's the second album in a row where the second track has been the misfire. So I want to start paying attention and see if there's a pattern here going on. But after that is one of my all-time favorite Thin Lizzy songs, Borderline. This is the song you hear on the jukebox when you're about 3 drinks in and really starting to feel the weight of the world on your shoulders. Such a heavy downer kind of a song, not heavy metal or not crushing riffs or anything, but man, this song will just put you in a depression so fast. The first few lines, midnight in the big city, at the bar drinking all on my own.
Okay.
Just thinking about that girl and me and how something's going wrong. Not something went wrong. It's not past tense. It's still happening. Something's going wrong and he knows it and he can't stop it. Buzzkill, but it's just brilliantly done. Yeah, one of my favorite tunes. Then you've got Don't Believe a Word. Again, really clever song. The lyrical plays and such, so well put together. Fool's Gold, fun song too. It's got a little different structure to it, but I like it. And then yes, you get to you start on side 2, and you got Johnny the Fox meets Jimmy the Weed, which has to be one of the strangest song titles ever. And yes, it's Thin Lizzy working out the funk vibes, and they do it so well. When they hit it just right, they nail it. There are a few of their funky songs I don't like, but in general, this is one of those hard rock bands I think that could actually pull off the funk songs and make them really, really good. This is another song that would just get stuck in my head for days at a time. Just the little exchange between the two of them. I've seen you at the lowriders hanging down on First Street in Maine. So smooth. So smooth. Just there's no friction. You just slide right off. Old Flame, this is just a nice kind of sentimental, laid back kind of ballad song. Very pretty well done. Massacre's the heavy track, like you said, Pat. Sweet Marie's another nice, just kind of pretty wistful one. Lynott's hitting all these different vocal styles. He can play these smooth back alley cats. He can be the sad morose guy drinking all on his own. He can be the balladeer. He wears all these hats so well. And even Boogie Woogie Dance gets again a little bit more of that urban concrete jungle getting the funk work back in a little bit, and it's a good song. It's got that dark tension to it. But it's still really catchy. It's a song you can sing along to at the same time. Masterfully put together album. This has for a very long time been my number 1 in the Thin Lizzy catalog. Lately, it was close. I almost let this slide down to number 2 because there's another album I've been playing a lot more in recent years and really digging. We'll get to that one later. But, it is that old flame of mine. I'm not going to let it slide down the list yet. So I would still list this as my favorite Thin Lizzy album. I think this shows the band, really at the peak of their powers. So number 1, a album for me.
We're talking about Phil in the comments, and I kind of put him in the same class as Dio. They're very similar in the fact that they're very bluesy singers. They have a very unique croon and style and smoothness to them. And much like, Phil, Dio never sang out of his range. He never ruined his vocals over the years. At the end, he was still on stage sounding really good, sounding like Dio. And Phil just had that. He didn't sing outside his range, but he had a lot of power and a smoothness. And when he brought in this emotive element, a very sad quality to his vocals, which worked on the ballads, it worked on the darker songs. You really felt every word he was saying, which, man, he was a true, not only songwriting mastermind, he was a beautiful voice, beautiful talent. Johnny the Fox, 2 albums in 1 year. Not overly familiar with this one, which is true. I own it, but it seems like a fan favorite. The songs to me are not as instantly catchy as found on Jailbreak, sounding rushed? Question mark. Someone said that he got hepatitis, they had to stop the tour, and he wrote this album in the hospital. Don't Believe the Word could have been on Jailbreak. Memorable guitar lines and punch makes this feel like a hit, and it's a great soulful song. The title track, it's a callback to the funky side of Vagabonds. Don't like this song. I'm tough. I'm a tough sell with the funk. I just am. Massacre, another heavy and proto-metal style track. It's the heaviest song on the album. Great song. It's a good album for me. I give it an 8, which leads us to 1977. Wow. 4 albums in 3 years. Bad Reputation. I do not own this one either. All right. Pat.
So Rubbo was like half out of the band in this.
Fired and rehired, only played on a few tracks.
Yep. Notice only 3 people on the cover there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, not even included.
Fired and rehired. I'm trying to remember. Like, trying to remember the reason why. I think he like got in a brawl or something, and like was in jail for a little bit, something like that. It's kind of funny because going back to fighting, and I watched there's a whole slew of documentaries about them on YouTube you can check out, and they're all pretty interesting because all the people involved with this band, whether they were ex-members or friends of or punters or Philo's mom or whatever. It's also funny, by the way, not to get on too much of a tangent, that Phil is named after his mom because her name is Philomena. But everybody in the documentary is super charming and funny and charismatic. It's kind of funny because they were bummed about the cover of Fighting. I think it was the original cover that Marty showed where he's holding I think it's supposed to be like a pry bar or something. It's like, that's not what we are. We're not a tug band, like a thug band. But like, then a little bit later when they're talking about touring in Europe, like, oh yeah, we were a gang. We used to just get into fights all the time.
They walked the walk and they went fisticuffs when they needed to. Yep.
It's like we were trying to portray like warrior poets, but you can't do that without being a warrior first, I guess. So anyway, yeah, he was out of the band for some kind of drama, some kind of beef. I don't know. Interesting guy, Brian Robertson, by the way. Like, interviews with him are pretty cool. And if you hear the stories about how he was in Motorhead and like really pissed off Lemmy, he was only in Motorhead for 1 record for a reason. You know,
he didn't want to play any of the old stuff.
He wasn't exactly into the cowboy boots and black leather jacket aesthetic.
No. Yeah, he had like some almost sort of pseudo glam thing going on, apparently.
Yep.
Just like sort of androgynous or some kind of shit like that. It was like not vibing at all.
Who wears short shorts? Brian wears short shorts.
Well, so does Lemmy.
Motorhead.
That's true, but not on stage. But anyways, so anyway, yeah, I mean, this is a great record. I'm trying to think. So where I got Fighting for 1. This is not number 2. Jailbreak's 4. Johnny Fox is 3. I'd probably say this is 6, I guess. Again, because I researched and looked into the last 3 records and the first 3 records because those were the ones that I was least familiar with. And now that I'm sitting here going over the ones that I've listened to a lot, I'm like, Like, for instance, on my phone, if you just noticed, I was like, wait, how does Soldier of Fortune go again? Oh, yeah. It's great. I mean, it's got a super simmering kind of intro and a great, like, kind of narrative about a soldier of fortune. And then it lapses, kind of goes into, you know, a little bit more of an up-tempo kind of, like, rock kind of thing. Everybody knows the title track, Bad Reputation, which I think is, you know, as far as best ofs, live sets, playlists, stuff like that, it's up there as one of the best Thin Lizzy songs as far as hard rock song goes, like real driving kind of stuff. Southbound probably is my favorite song from the record. You know, the chorus is so catchy. It's got that soul to it. Yeah, seriously. Just in case. But yeah, Southbound, probably my favorite track on there. Dancing in the Moonlight. That was the thing. One of the first things that I got from Thin Lizzy was the live record. Right here, Live and Dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great live album. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit, like maybe towards the end or something. But that song came up on there with like the sax solo and everything, and I'm like, this is the worst fucking. I feel like I'm watching an episode of Moonlighting. Like I feel like this should be in the background with Bruce Willis like doing whatever. Like I hate saxophones. I hate ballads. What the fuck is this? And then after about 3 or 4 listens, I'm like, this song fucking shreds. It just got in there. Like it's such a good song. There's a lot of stuff like that I don't like, but that song is great to me. Trying to think if I have anything else to say. Killer Without a Cause is pretty great, pretty good. Dear Lord, decent song. But yeah, I mean, that was my main impressions from that record.
Ranking?
I thought I did.
Maybe you did. I didn't hear it. Sorry. Reading the chat, I don't always hear. I can't listen and I can't multitask very well.
I would say 6.
Okay. Alan, Bad Reputation.
Bad Reputation. Yeah. This one is a very good album. I want to piss Ash off by ranking it a bit lower. For me, I'm just want to preface it before I go through tracks. Out of this, really incredible run of albums they did, this is the one I have the lowest. And there's not necessarily a reason for it. All the songs are pretty good. For me, it just doesn't have the same, all the albums we've been talking about, with Jailbreak and Johnny the Fox, and we're about to get to Black Rose. Those albums are so loaded with, essential tracks. This one has a lot of very good tracks. Soldier of Fortune is not a bad opener. Not my favorite on the album, but it's not a bad track whatsoever. Bad Reputation. Now here, the second track's actually quite good. Opium Trail, really good one. It's, a little faster, it's got a good tension in Phil's vocal delivery. Like that one a lot. And then, Southbound's one of the best ones on it. But it's one of these airy, more laid back kind of, here you're not, prowling around, the back alleys at midnight. It's more like, hey, you borrowed your buddy's convertible and you're driving down the coast for the Saturday afternoon. It's a nice, pleasant day, sunny, little clouds, great song. But just, it's one of those more laid back, Lizzy tunes. Dancing on the Moonlight, same thing everybody else is saying. It feels like it's a song you're supposed to hate, but it's just too good. You got to like it. But it's got that poppy thing. It's got the saxophone. I guess once in a while, saxophone works. Killer Without a Cause is fine. Downtown Sundown, really another one. Very smooth, very kind of pretty laid back track here. Woman's Gonna Break Your Heart is okay. It's got, the kind of the timpani drums in the chorus. Makes it feel maybe a little more, epic, but it also, that song to me feels a little repetitive, and maybe because it uses that same hook over and over. And I like the closer, Dear Lord. But it's another one that is a little bit more on the laid back side. So when I, go through this album with the tracks, there's a lot of them I like, but they tend to be the numbers that are a little softer, a little quieter. And as such, to me, this feels like almost like a much, much improved version of Nightlife. Don't unsubscribe, Ash. I mean that in a nice way. It's got a lot of songs I like, but it doesn't have the real full throttle, heavier, hard rocking tunes at the same level as what's come before, or as what's going to come on some of the albums afterward. So while it may sound like I'm talking the album down some, again, in terms of a letter grade, it's still give it, B minus. It's still a good album. In terms of ranking it, though, I've got to put it 7th. It and Fighting kind of right here next to each other for that 6th and 7th slot. there's just other albums. I mean, can I put it higher than Jailbreak or Johnny the Fox? No, I just can't. It's got to be a notch or two down from there. So 7th for me. It is a good album, but it is the I'm not going to say weak link because that's selling it completely wrong. Yeah, I know, Ash. I know. Sorry, we'll have to be friends again in another life. But it is not a bad album. It is not a weak album. It's just that out of this, when I go to the shelf and I want to listen to Thin Lizzy, it's just like Jailbreak, A, Johnny the Fox, A, Black, all these other albums, A, and then there's Bad Reputation. It's never the one I pick to hear the whole album from. So that's why it's ranked a bit lower than those. It still fits in really good. It's still a really fine album that is worthy of inclusion in this magical era of Thin Lizzy. So yeah, I don't mean to sell it short. It's just not a personal favorite among their albums.
All
right, Marty. See if you can get back on Ash's good side here. I've messed it up.
I've only listened to this album once, so this is all first impression stuff. The album for me starts out solid, but fizzles out about halfway. The title track rules, all the excellent elements, glorious guitars, punchy drum fills, and an overall heavy but smooth vibe. Killer Without a Cause, heavy and interesting song. I'm not a big fan of Southbound or Dancing in the Moonlight or Downtown Sundown.
That's because you don't know how to have fun, Marty.
No, I don't. I don't know how to party.
Embrace your inner Bruce Willis.
And I do have to say, we talk a lot about all this stuff, and one thing that really hasn't been brought up is Brian Downey. He is the only other original member of this band that it was on every single album all the way through, and he is a badass drummer. I mean, he keeps time extremely well, but when he adds color to a song, it's heavy, it's great. I've watched a couple live things where his drum solos were awesome. He was a great drummer. People were talking, I used to work at Kmart, so I was called K-Marty for the 5 years I worked there.
Oh, that's unfortunate on many levels.
I went from being Marty Farty in school to K-Marty after school, so it just, Party Marty or Party Worm whatever, it's all good. But yeah, Brian Downey, a fantastic drummer. He adds so much to these songs and this band, and obviously him and Phil connected on many different levels because he is one of the guys that was there just as long as Phil was. I guess there was one tour that he had to be replaced on later on because he had health problems. So, and that's it. And he wasn't like out of the band. It was just, he couldn't make that one tour. So, what fantastic drummer. Yeah. Blue Light Special K Marty. Yeah. But, I just wanted to say Brian Downey, we haven't really talked about the drums at all. Yeah. And he does his job. He keeps time really well, but his drum fills are exceptional. And he's a very solid, strong, powerful drummer. Excellent weapon in Phil's arsenal for sure.
Well, he can do all that funk shit,
Yeah, he could break it up from funk to ballads. I mean, there are songs on later albums where he's just playing like a rim shot in a hi-hat very patiently for the entire song. Most drummers want to color it up a little bit, but all right, that brings, I didn't give that was a Bad Reputation number 7 for me.
Okay. Now here, Pat mentioned, we should probably give a nod of the hat to what happened in 1978 with Live and Dangerous.
Oh yeah.
Because this is often recognized as a pretty big time live outing.
Take that, you stupid tape.
Yeah,
cassettes.
Live and Dangerous. It's cool. I managed to, I got a Vertigo pressing of this, and yes, it's very old, but it sounds good. It's got the paper label and all that. Really neat. Yeah, I mean, I think this is regarded for some people as almost like an Unleashed in the East, or if you're a hardcore or punk person, a Live at CBGB Agnostic Front, where it's like there might be some studio trickery and overdubs going on there, but it's a lot of stuff is like freshened up sounding, brighter, like an example of a live record in some ways sounding better than the studio. One of those kind of deals. And I don't think it's quitely. I don't think it quite sold as well as Frampton Comes Alive, but I do know that it was a really big deal as far as the live albums go. It was sold well, and it's very well regarded. And the reason why is that it's fucking awesome. It sounds great. There's just a little bit of stage banter, the classic, do you have any Irish in you? Do you want any? Or that whole thing. He actually mentions this was written by Bob Seger. He's talking about Rosalie there. Yeah, it was an introduction for me. I think it was one of the first things I physically owned by Thin Lizzy. I bought it on CD because I didn't at that point, like, downloading wasn't as widespread and I only had limited funds. So it was, getting everything I could in one spot. But yeah, it's an excellent recording. I do want to mention that, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but just to throw it out there, Live and Dangerous is awesome. I prefer this one, Life Live, which is this that farewell tour at the very end of their career. So it has stuff from spanning the whole discography. Cold Sweat, Thunder and Lightning, stuff at the end. Has all the guitarists playing on it and jamming at one point or another, which is very cool.
Huh.
So it's a bit more raw. It might be straight up live. I'm not sure. I don't know if there's any studio trickery or not, but it sounds awesome regardless because these guys could play their asses off. So
yeah, they were kind of made for the stage. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that you might as well lead into Black Rose, rock legend, 1979.
Don't mind if I do. Another cassette there. This is one of those records where, again, like, there's so many hits on this that ended up on live records and on best ofs. And then there's some other stuff that, like, I'm not quite as familiar with, but there's a lot of really poppy songs on this. Like the opening track, Do Anything You Want to Do, is a real finger snapping.
This is Gary Moore's first recorded album too, by the way.
Thank you. This is where he was finally in the lineup at the right time to record an album with them.
The second song, Got to Give It Up, might be, well, not my favorite song on the record. My favorite song on the record is probably the title track, which is fantastic. But Got to Give It Up might be my second favorite. I was listening to this in the car, and obviously it's Phil Lynott acknowledging what addiction is. And he's talking about it in the third person, but I think he was definitely a heavy boozer at this point. It was probably getting into harder stuff. And he's talking about trying to give someone trying to give it up. And it's just a catchy song. S&M, I don't remember. Waiting for an Alibi, another like great rock and roll song. Sarah, which is the second Sarah, which is about his daughter, which is a very like sweet ode to his daughter. Gotta Get Out of Here, great song too, another hard rocker. And then I'm going over the tracks I like the most, but yeah, I know I'll butcher it because it's in Gaelic or whatever, but Rose and Dub, the Black Rose, a rock legend. Just the snaking kind of serpentine dueling leads on that. Yeah. They do that a lot, Thin Lizzy, but they do it the best on this. I love it. I love all the Irish references all throughout the song. I mean, it's a masterpiece of it. It's a long song. It's 7 minutes or so, but I'm completely enwrapped every single time I listen to it. It's wonderful. Where I would put it, I'm trying to think. Did 4 or 5? Did I do 5 yet? Did I give anything a 5?
I really should have. I think 5 is open.
Okay, I would put this in at 5 then. Throw that right there.
Pat's list has 3 5s on it.
Yeah. Yeah. You didn't say how many 5s I could have.
5, the number of my list.
I was confused. I thought all of them would be a 1 out of 10 kind of thing, not like a pantheon of.
I'm sorry. Yeah. We should have specified.
That's okay. Whatever. I'll do it on the off the cuff. I'm a professional. It's fine.
There you go. This isn't your first rodeo. See, I brought it back to the cowboy thing there.
Exactly.
Alan, Black Rose, a rock legend.
Yeah, it really is a rock legend. Again, the band is still just going from strength to strength on these albums. It's amazing. You look at the track list on this one, and it's got a lot of my favorite Lizzy songs of all time. you want to is a good peppy opener. Not one of my favorites on the album, but it's a good start to the album. Toughest Street in Town is, yes, just, Lizzy at their best. Every verse, a quick glimpse, at the not so great life of one of these people. Again, just going, to the lyrics, for, the first character you meet, she's destitute and broken down. She softly whispers, "Is there no one around?" No one hears the sound as her knees give way and hit the ground. This is the toughest street in town. And it's poppy, it's catchy, but you're listening to it, it's just like, this isn't good. Stuff's going wrong for this person. Very, very wrong. Just amazingly done. And then you get S&M. And Pat, there's a reason you don't remember it. It's because the smart part of your brain has taken that song, packed it into a tiny little box, and hidden it somewhere in your medulla oblongata where you can't access it very easy.
Those three brain cells that are still smart.
It is. I'm
Come on, Daddy.
It might be the worst song they ever wrote. It
Yeah.
is schmaltzy in all the wrong ways. Even by 1979 standards, it's kind of cringy when he's saying it's okay to beat the lady. And then they have the little girly chorus. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just like, what's happening here? How did this song come to exist? It's like, it's just not good on any level. It is a black eye on black rose. There, I've been clever. I'll move on.
There's a lot of women getting their asses whooped on this song, on this album.
Waiting for an Alibi. That's a great song. It's got that classic Phil smoothness on it. It moves very good. It's got good energy. So it balances the pop. It balances the rock. Great track. Sarah, pretty ballad about his newborn daughter. Works absolutely fine. It's fine to have a ballad on this kind of album. Side B is just bangers. Got to Give It Up. Again, yes, these characters know they're in trouble, that they're leaning on that vice a little too hard and can't quite give it up. Get Out of Here. The vocal trippiness to this song is just amazing with it. Crap. Yeah, let me pull it up here for a second. Why not? Let's see. There are just so many good ones on here because this is this is a hard one to sing along to because Phil's just doing this really quick rapid fire tripping over things, but just this verse of I used to be a dreamer, but I realized that's not my style at all. In fact, it becomes clear that a dreamer doesn't stand a chance at all. Get out of here. Just works so well. Absolutely brilliant song. Then you still have With Love, really pretty song. This is one of those more laid back, airy sounding ones, and they nail it. And of course, then Black Rose Legend, yet another attempt at something more grand and more epic, and it comes together really well. Sometimes I have heard people who I'm not going to name, they know who they are, kind of want to write Thin Lizzy off as being a little two-dimensional. Like, I guess they're fine and sort of, just want, some cut and paste 70s hard rock stuff. But, they're no Blue Oyster Cult. They're no UFO. They're no, pick some other band.
I think they're better than those bands, to be honest.
When you start looking, though, at some, the variety in some of these songs that, they can do, this, real groovy funk of, Johnny the Fox, that they can write something like, Black Rose and Emerald. They can do those songs. They can do the ballads well. They can do the rockers well. They've got a lot more in their arsenal than I think people sometimes give them credit for. And I'm not slagging on any of those other bands. Blue Oyster Cult's a great band. But if Thin Lizzy's its own beast, yes, Thin Lizzy's a little more straightforward in the lyrical department. You're not going to spend the next 30 years arguing with three other cultists in a chat group about what the secret lyrical meaning behind Imaginos is. You can do that with Blue Oyster Cult. You're not going to do that when it comes to a song like S&M. It's not going to happen. But they're not just a cut and paste 70s hard rock band either. There's a lot of range in this band that they don't always get credit for from the haters. So every time I look at the track list for this album, I kind of ask myself, why is this not my favorite Thin Lizzy album? And it's just because so many of their albums are so damn good. This one could be number one, and I wouldn't bat an eye on it. These days I rank it third, and I think it seems insane. I give the album an A, maybe an A+. So I mean, we're talking about a band with multiple A+ kind of albums here. Yeah, I guess that S&M song, you lose a big point for just having one of the worst songs of your career right there in the middle of side A. But everything else on this album is just wonderful. This could easily be my favorite Thin Lizzy album. But Johnny the Fox has already taken the number one spot, and we haven't got to the number two spot yet. My number two is still open because I wrote my list down. So there will only be one number two on my list, unlike Pat, who's got 7.
Yeah, no, you guys and chat, feel free to correct me if I'm like, yeah, this is 12. You're like, no, you already.
This is a solid number 5.
Quick aside, since we're around, this is 79.
Yep.
The last record was 77. In 78, Phil Lynott also got into punk, and I think it's something to be said. There were very few people from hard rock or heavy metal that, I don't know if necessarily they weren't welcome or they just weren't interested, but there's only a handful that really got involved. Lemmy, of course, famously being one of them, being friends with people in the punk scene, playing bass in the Damned for a little while.
Yep.
Yes, the Greedy Bastards. Apparently, and I don't know if there's recorded stuff. I assume there might be at least live stuff recorded. I only found out about this just researching for this stream, but yeah, it was Steve Jones and Paul Cook from the Sex Pistols had a project with Phil Lynott called the Greedy Bastards, or the Greedies to be short. And he also just like kind of hung out with the Rock. I think the Roxy was the club in London that had a lot of the punk shows and stuff. There's pictures of Phil Lynott with like gay advert from the Adverts. So he was definitely open to the punk stuff, which is cool because like even Iron Maiden, who were like a new band at the time, like barely getting started, were like, oh, fuck that stuff. We can't. Those guys can't play their instruments or whatever.
Yeah, to this day, Steve Harris, claims, he, hates punk and has always hated punk, despite some rather punky, bits and pieces in Iron Maiden.
Yeah, times. I don't know, man. I don't know. He stands by that to this day. I mean,
yep.
You do you, Steve Harris. That's fine. Yep. There's also a really funny picture of like they both look like they're definitely they've been doing some downhill skiing nose first. For this picture of Phil Lynott and Rodney Dangerfield. Like, I'm sure it's Googleable. It's just a great image. It's like two of the best people to have ever existed, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's a really good point. It does speak to Phil's, just broad interest in music. That he didn't shut out the punk scene, which did end up taking a lot of the kind of a big chunk of the spotlight off of Thin Lizzy and hard rock bands. They're in the later part of the 70s, especially in the UK.
If you can't beat them, join them, right?
Well, I mean, they didn't really go punk at any point, but he certainly was open to checking them out, and seeing what they were about, which a lot of folks weren't.
All right,
Marty, what do you think about Black Rose?
It's a great album. It's a very solid album. Even minor experiments or deviation from rock sits pretty well here. My Sarah, the second Sarah song, could have been a hit. Get Out of Here, solid rocker. S&M, it's an odd funk 70s action cinema concept. Fits, but not my fave. That Chickawaga guitar, type stuff.
Yeah,
hate that crap.
Car chase.
Yeah, it's a car chase, 70s guitar chase stuff. And, the story is sort of interesting, but just the way it come across. But the cool thing about the song is he didn't care. He tried it. It's something. It's an experiment. He tried it. And is it my jam? No. But is it a terrible song? I mean, it's a well-constructed song. It's just not good. It just doesn't fit with here. Got to give it up. Feels like a Boys Are Back in Town with a dark reflection on addiction. My favorite song on here was it Rosen Dub? Is that how you say that? Most ambitious track. And it's just the title track essentially. Most ambitious track and my favorite, endlessly hook laden twin guitar lines. So much power. I mean, he was just a masterful songwriter. And this album for me, thanks to Craig Zoller for sending it to me. Black Rose, number 4 for me, which leads us to 1980, getting into the 80s, Chinatown.
And here we have another lineup change in the guitar department.
Okay, so yes.
I did not write that down.
On the next one. Let me see here.
And Snowy comes in on this one.
Okay,
I don't think he does any. He came in, I think, late in the writing process, and he didn't really get to have much input on the songwriting. But yeah, he's in. Gary Moore has moved on, and Snowy White is in.
Cool cover art.
I don't have too much on this one, to be honest. Like, I listened to it a bunch of times. Nothing really. Yeah, the cover art, especially the back cover there, is rad. It's they're. I feel like Thin Lizzy, if they were to continue onward, like say Phil went to rehab or whatever, if he were still alive today, I feel like they definitely would be kind of a Motorhead kind of band in the sense that a lot of people criticize Motorhead like, oh, they have, everything sounds exactly the same. That's not true, but there's, if you love Motorhead, that there's certain templates. There's like, the kind of like real bluesy, like boogie rock kind of Motorhead song. There's the dozen plus songs that sound like Ace of Spades that have different, parts swapped out, like that kind of thing. I think at this point, this record has like what came to be like Thin Lizzy tropes that are in there. There's like Chinatown. I can't put my finger on it, but it sounds like a bunch of the title track sounds like a bunch of other Thin Lizzy songs. Killer on the Loose is a really good track. I know they got a bunch of shit for the lyrics. It was about a real serial killer, not to be confused with Jack the Ripper, but there's the Yorkshire Ripper. I didn't really even look at the lyrics. I'm sure they're not that bad. Genocide, Killing of the Buffalo is another standout track to me. All in all, it's a pretty okay record. But nothing about it really grabbed me the way that the previous records did with the handful of times that I listened to it this week. So I'll put it at that. I don't really have too much to add other than that. I think I had the self-titled at 12 and Blue Orphanage at 10, if I'm remembering right. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Nope. You're on track.
I would put this in probably
5.
probably at 9, because spoiler alert, I think Renegade would probably be 11. So I would do that.
All right.
That's all I really got for that.
Alan.
All right. Yeah, as usual, echo a lot of Pat's sentiments on this album. This was the one Thin Lizzy album from their mid 70s all the way to the end of the line that I just never got around to hearing, and I didn't avoid it for any reason. I remember seeing it in the record shop plenty of times. I just never got around to picking it up. It was always one of those cases where it's like, maybe I'll get Chinatown this time. Ooh, look, there's a new System of a Down album. Just kidding. I would never buy a System of a Down album. That's a war. That's where I come from. That's a war crime. But
war crime.
So yeah, this one I just never got around to checking out for the longest time. And when I did, it's a pretty solid album. The band was still quite popular at this point, doing well. But here you're also getting it is the 1980s now. Things are starting to change on the music scene. Hard rock is now kind of becoming heavy metal. In a way, this is 1980, and the new wave of British heavy metal is becoming a thing. And while Thin Lizzy has influenced all these kids, and is basically some of these kids are opening for Thin Lizzy as a tour for this album and stuff. I know in some interviews and stuff, Thin Lizzy started to feel around this time they realized that they weren't going to get any bigger. That they had probably already peaked or plateaued, and that now some of these other younger, hungrier bands might start to edge past them. The lineup change, Snowy Shaw is usually not ranked as, one of anybody's favorite guitarists. I don't think he did anything wrong. He also had very little input. This album was, I think, mostly written before he was even on board, and he brought in some ideas, but reportedly Phil wasn't really given too much of an ear to what he was offering to add into stuff. But it's not a bad track list overall, really. We Will Be Strong is a nice opener, a very anthemic, good, solid tune. Chinatown, there's nothing wrong with. Yeah, it's got that kind of a little bit of rumbly vibe to it. Sweetheart's kind of a cool song. Sugar Blues is one that's surprising because you look at that title and you think, okay, this is going to be the bluesy number, and it's actually one of the heavier songs on it. It's got a real heavy weight to it. I like that one a lot. Yep, Pat already touched on Killer on a Loose. Side B, I don't remember as much about. Genocide, Killing of the Buffalo is another one. It's a good, heavier song, a little darker, goes back to that Western motif again.
Yep.
It does feel a little repetitive. They go back to that line, the Killing of the Buffalo, a little too often. That song, of course, covered by Running Wild about a decade later. And wraps up, with another couple of songs that are, decent. So this is one that there's not many tracks on here I'd point to and say, like, I don't like that. Most days like, yeah, that's not bad. Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. But, if we go back to that idea of putting together the Thin Lizzy best of playlist, the favorite tracks, the greatest hits, what do I pick from this? For me personally, I want to put Sugar Blues on. We Will Be Strong, maybe. I don't know what I pick for the third song, which is
Chinatown's a rocker. It's a good song.
There's nothing wrong with Chinatown. There's just a lot of, they have a lot of other better rockers at this point. I guess is the problem that, the catalog's pretty loaded, and, some of these songs for me just aren't breaking through into that upper echelon. So at the end of the day, yeah, I'd still give the album. It's still like a B minus kind of album. It's still a solid album. I don't dislike it at all, but ranking wise, it's ninth. First two albums below it and Nightlife below it. And then Chinatown is basically fourth up from the bottom. And it's simply because there's no room for me to replace it with anything above. What am I going to rank it higher than? Bad Reputation? Vagabonds? Fighting? All those albums have to be higher in my echelon. So a low rank, but not a bad album. I think it just does lack a little bit for standout tunes. And again, yeah, as Pat articulated, the band's running into more and more drug use. There's some personal tensions there. Snowy's in, but he's there. He's playing. He's not necessarily being incorporated as
he's a hired hand, basically.
In a way, he is filling in. Yeah, that's fair. So
hired
gunslinger. Chinatown. It's just like, we need a guitarist. You'll work. It's like, you'll do. Sure. Come on in and let's get this thing done. This album, I think also they maybe had some delays or issues getting it all put together because you were running into more personal issues starting to cause some delays and pushing things back. So yeah, that's my take on Chinatown. Marty, sounds like you like the title track. What else do you like on this one?
I think it's kind of funny in this little conversation we've had tonight. We've recognized that Thin Lizzy songs have been covered by Willie Nelson and Running Wild, which are two opposite ranges of the spectrum here, and that just goes to show.
Well, Willie did cover. Willie did cover Under Jolly Roger. It's on a rare live bootleg. You probably won't be able to find it.
I thought he covered Genghis Khan.
I also should mention Thin Lizzy. They were early. A rock band was an early example of like broing down, so to speak, with punk bands. There have been punk bands recently. I'm not a fan of them, but they're known for their Thin Lizzy influence. This band called Sheer Mag, who I think I've listened to them once and was like, I don't know, it's not really my thing. But it's definitely punk with that kind of like weird, snaky kind of riff influence. My friend's band, We the People, who I'm going to be releasing their tape, plug, were like kind of like a street punk oi band that had the occasional like snaky Thin Lizzy riff thrown in. There's a band Annihilation Time they were like a mid to late 2000s California hardcore band that they sounded like a mix of like 70s hard rock and Black Flag. Awesome, really fucking good band. I think a lot of people that may not necessarily be punk fans might dig Annihilation Time. all about the riffs, and they definitely covered Bad Reputation. So they had their influences on a lot of different parts.
It's great. It's awesome. It's a testament to their music, you know. Very cool. For me, Chinatown, I own the record, and I realized that when I put it on Spotify this week, I haven't listened to it that much, but it really clicked with me. I put it at my number 3 position. When your drummer is named the leadoff songwriter for a track, you know it's going to be a rocker, and Chinatown is that song. It's a favorite of mine on here. Flowing and interesting guitar lines, peak with tasteful solos, endlessly memorable. Genocide, Killing of the Buffalo, solid song, interesting with historical lyrics. Sugar, I can't read my writing. The Sugar song in here. Having a good time, are my least favorites on here. I don't have a whole lot on here other than I like the record, number 3. It sounds like Thin Lizzy. I mean, even their not so great songs really still are good songs. Which leads us to their second to last album, 1981's Renegade.
AKA Communism is fucking sick. I don't own that one.
No, I don't either.
I was actually just looking at because there was a factoid that I was looking up on the YouTube music thing, and that was it's got the red flag there. I noticed at the top of the red flag with the yellow star on it, there's like an axe, like a battle axe kind of thing, which is kind of a cool touch. The thing that I thought was kind of like borderline Spinal Tap about this is it features like a certain prog element with like keyboards that sound pretty cool. That's my main takeaway from this is like the presence of keyboards I do appreciate on this, especially the opening track, Angel of Death.
The keyboardist, I will add that the Darren Wharton, he was named a full member for this record. He was brought in as the 5th member of Thin Lizzy,
and credited in like the liner notes as a member of the band, but still not in the band photo.
Yeah,
and I find that kind of heartbreaking.
Maybe they did it afterwards, but yeah,
maybe it's just. But anyway, I mean, I dug this. I would probably put this in my 11 slot though. Like nothing about it really gelled with me. I mean, over the years, I'm sure I'll probably listen to it more. Angel of Death is a great track. I love the way the keyboards sound on that. You know, I'm very, very tender and careful about what prog I touch because I don't want my punk points taken away. But like, I mean, like anybody else, I enjoy Lamb Lies Down on Broadway and King Crimson, you know, stuff like that. I like the keyboards on the first couple of songs. One thing I noticed, I believe it's Hollywood Down on Your Luck, going back to the Thin Lizzy, going back to their tropes. The main riff in the beginning sounds like The Boys Are Back in Town, or I think The Boys Are Back in Town, or Jailbreak. It sounds like the riff from Jailbreak with a few things rearranged, like not by a lot. Yeah. And then the chorus is totally different. The chorus is really good, actually. Down on your luck. I can't sing, so I'm sorry for doing that. But it's an overall good song, but it sounds like them kind of just rearranging pieces, which kind of, you know, goes back to what I was saying earlier. And that song Mexican Blood was pretty cool too, but I felt like they're also kind of going on the Western tropes a bunch on that one as well, which is a theme. But overall, like not a bad record, probably better than a lot of other shit that I listen to, really. But it's not high in my pantheon there, so there you go.
Okay, Ellen.
All right. Well, it had to happen sooner or later. Pat and I are going to diverge on this one because I've always liked this album quite a bit. It is not a real popular one in their discography. I think most folks would actually be on Pat's side of this and rank it relatively low. This is that one sort of, you know, deep cuts album for me that just, and it has its flaws, but I actually do dig a lot of the tunes on here. And I think, you know, some of them are heavier than maybe they get credit for. Angel of Death actually has, you know, it's a pretty dark, menacing kind of sound overall to it. Sure. Yes, you know, you're getting some of the keyboard stuff worked in, and that's, you know, can be a deal breaker for a lot of fans. But yeah, overall, it's, you know, kind of an ominous tune. I like it. Renegade is, you know, it fits in with, you know, the classic Thin Lizzy tropes that we've discussed already. The Pressure Will Blow, again, it's at least got, a little bit of, that, heavier, grittier tension to it. Not my favorite song of the album, but the chorus, definitely, kind of have a good rumble to it for sure. Leave This Town, a little faster tune. The better ones that were on side 2 this time. Hollywood Down Your Luck is the one song most people will point to as like, that's your track from Renegade. If you've got to do the best of Lizzy and you got to represent every album, that's the one you pick, because that one really does shine. It's got that star hit song potential where it could have, been a big deal, off one of those, albums that came, before the Snowy White era. No one told him I never remember that song, just right over my head. That's this album's S&M. This song, it's that slow, jazzy tune, and it's so out of place. He discussed Lizzy covers a lot more ground sometimes. Sometimes when you're doing that, you do wander out of bounds, and I have to throw a flag on this one. Sorry, the receiver is 5 yards out of bounds before attempting to make this thing work. You got to call that one back. I do not like that song. It just doesn't work for me. But it's followed by one of their really unsung pretty songs that somebody had just mentioned in the chat too, Mexican Blood. Very pretty song. It has that Western vibe. They get a little bit of the kind of flamenco guitar. And it's another one of those very sad, songs of love that's not going to work out, and young people making bad decisions. It's classic Thin Lizzy. It's a great song. It's just kind of buried on this unpopular album. And it's getting dangerous, isn't it? It's, perks things up a little bit. Yeah, it's a good ending. That's exactly right, Marty. It's a good way to end this particular album.
Yep.
So, yeah, I get why people don't like it. It's getting, like you said, Marty, it's got a designated, keyboard player now. Yeah, that can be a little dicey. And, it's not got as many of those, hard rocking hits from the, mid and late 70s, but it's not the 70s anymore. This is a band that now has to find their place in what was a rapidly evolving music scene of the early 80s. You think about how many of those giants of the 70s were already either dead and gone or struggling by this point. Deep Purple, they're not just extinct, they're already fossilized by 81. Led Zeppelin is now been relegated to history by 81.
God. Sorry.
UFO as already parted ways. Yeah. You know what I did there.
All those old bands like that during that time, they're just zombies, man. They're dead. They don't know it.
A lot of them have a difficult time making that transition into the 80s. You've got a new generation, of bands coming up, these guys, that have been plugging away at it, at this point for, over a decade. They now got to compete with Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth.
Perfect Strangers had some okay songs on it, but man, it's such a bland fart album,
Perfect. There were some bands that came along
for Deep Purple, and
that doesn't come until 84. I mean, that's
still 80s album. That's still 80s
away.
Yeah.
And it's Deep Purple reinventing themselves as more of an 80s pop rock band, which I think they did pretty well on that album. It's okay. It's got several good songs on it. Yeah. But, here's, Thin Lizzy is kind of working through this period. This is where they've kind of got to find what they're going to be moving forward. And they're having to do it, with, a lot of personal issues going on at the same time. But they are soldiering on. They haven't folded up and closed shop. They haven't gone completely like, skinny necktie, new wave vibes or anything.
Honestly, like if they did go that direction, I'd be really interested in hearing it.
It's actually
like the Knack or something. Like, I don't know. Like I might be kind of stoked on that. Like,
well, it's interesting you said that, Pat, because over on Sea of Tranquility, I don't know if it was today or a very recent episode, they started a 2-part series on what would have happened to these artists had they lived longer. And of course, one of them that came up was Phil Lynott.
That is such a what if. That is that's just a brain exercise. There's no way to predict.
Most of what we do are brain exercises.
I know.
Ranking Thin Lizzy albums is a brain exercise.
Yeah.
But that one thing they mentioned about Phil Lynott, because he was working on a solo career. I'm starting to that
solo and solo
as well. Yep. And one thing that I think it was Martin Popoff proposed was that Phil Lynott he was not above maybe churning out some crappy, early 80s kind of new wave sounding albums. Back to your point you made before, Pat, that Phil was interested in these other styles of music.
Yeah.
And he was always kind of paying attention.
He's
to
a
what was
songwriter.
popular.
He
Appreciated
appreciated good songs. Yeah.
He was paying attention to what the punk scene was doing. He was paying attention to what was happening in the early 80s. And it's possible that he might have gone Devo for an album or two had things worked out just a little differently. Anyway, let me wrap up here and give Marty a chance to talk Renegade. So yes, I get why some people don't have it ranked. It doesn't have a lot of songs that people instantly associate with Thin Lizzy's greatest of all time. And it's just one of those underdog albums that I happen to like more than maybe I should. And as such, I rank it 5th in the catalog, and I give it a grade of a solid B. So that's Renegade for me. Even with its problems, I still find a lot of value in this record.
All right. Well, this record is 6th for me. Expertly assembled songs, very tight and together production, placing focus on Lizzy's smooth demeanor. It's almost too pristine of a production. That's one thing about this record. It's so crisp and clean. They've rounded off all the edges, all the rough edges for me, which it shouldn't be a factor, but it kind of is a little bit here. Favorite song on here, The Pressure Will Blow. Excellent and uplifting guitar lines in the bridge. Amazing solos. Sorry, excuse me. Leave This Town, hard rocker. It's one of those driving down the road with the windows down, hair blowing, what's left of your hair blowing in the wind type of. It says emphasis on, I can't read my own writing. Anyway, personal lyrics. He's always been a very introspective. He does a lot of tales and all that stuff, but his personal stuff is pretty deep. And like No One Told Him, there's a lot of personal reflections on relationships on that one. Hollywood. It's kind of an observation on how if you live in LA, you probably have a better shot at making it. Living in London, not so much type of situation. Interesting like that. I dislike the song Fats. I dislike Mexican Blood. I know you guys both said. He says if you were to do a shot every time he says Mexican in that song, by the minute mark, you would be trashed. Alcohol poisoning. But
what's your point? And your point is?
I don't know. I just think he leaned too much on the song title there. He used it too much in the lyrics. Good ending. It's getting dangerous. It's a soulful, well written, heavy. It's good. Everything about it is good. 6 for me. I listened to this album once this week. This is all first time impressions. One I'm going to pick up for sure. And that leaves us with the final album, 1983's Thunder and Lightning, which
lineup change.
Oh boy, I get so excited when I see this
God
record.
Damn. It's so exciting.
It's so exciting. Hits you like a hammer. God damn.
Honestly, like me with this record, the title track I've listened to on streaming or spun various formats more than any other Thin Lizzy song. Holy fuck.
It's a great song. Wow.
Somebody pointed out to me that it's like very much close, like at least the riff structure to a Cro-Mag song. I don't know how many people in chat are familiar with the Cro-Mags from New York. Hardcore band that took a lot of Motorhead influence.
Which song?
Like a couple of different songs of theirs, but just the general pace of it. You can picture John Joseph's vocals over Thunder and Lightning. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Just, there's something about the urgency of it that's like, it's almost proto-hardcore. It's so pissed. And I mean, it's been covered numerous times. I think most famously or notoriously by Gothic Slam, Marty's favorite band.
Oh, such a stupid band. That band is stupid.
They're fine. They're just
thrash. You God.
Not my favorite thrash band, but they were a thrash band.
They seem like almost like a a thrash boy band. I mean, they got to look a certain way, have to have the perfect hair helmet. I don't know.
I don't
They're
know.
like
They
assembled
almost
in a lab.
were closer to. They were almost sort of crossover. Like they kind of sounded like that New York kind of thing. Like I described them as like Leeway if Leeway were carnies. Like that's the best thing. But anyway, they covered them. I think that was my first time actually hearing the song in any kind of form, shape, or form. Was their cover of it. And I mean, that's why this is my number 3. Is that for that song only? Like I love that song so much. The rest of the record is good. It's definitely their heaviest. You know, you can tell even with the cover art
and their darkest.
No, absolutely. Cold Sweat is another standout track from the record. The first song on side B. Holy War is another big one for me. Like those 3 are the big standout tracks. But I mean, Baby Please Don't Go is also another pretty fucking rad ballad.
Yeah, it's cool.
It is a great swan song, absolutely. But man, I don't know what their Heart Attack is a good closer too. But I don't know what they were smoking, what was in the water when they wrote Thunder and Lightning. But I just, man, it's like if I still exercise, that would be a definite gym track for me because it's just so pounding.
It's really cool how the synth he picks almost like an organ tone to go along with the riff. It just makes it so weird. It's very cool.
It's the specifically the Cro-Mag song that is most similar to is Hard Times, but it's this that the Cro-Mags were really
coming your way.
Yeah, the Cro-Mags were really effective because they were fast, but they were heavy at the same time.
Yeah,
they weren't too fast. They weren't rip your face off DRI fast, or like the first Agnostic Front record. It was a pummeling heavy because they were into Black Sabbath and Motorhead as well as Bad Brains and Discharge. But there's something about they had like because they grew up listening to hard rock, you know, and there's a missing link between those two, and I don't know, like that opening track is just so good. I won't babble anymore about it, but yeah, number 3 for me.
All right,
or 5. No, we'll go 5.
This has got 5. If I ever thought about the number 5, I'd look at this record and I know that's what it was. Alan.
All right, yeah. So I said, with Renegade, maybe even with Chinatown a little bit. The band's trying to find their footing in the 80s. Where do we go? What are we going to be here? And on this album, they decided they're going to be heavy fucking metal, and they do it really well. And yeah, they make the statement right off the bat, as Pat's said, with the title track Thunder and Lightning. Yeah, it it just hits you right in the face. And as folks in the chat have already been discussing, you can't. Snowy White's out, and they've brought in John Sykes. John Sykes had come out of Tigers of Pantang. He was on their second and third albums. So they're bringing in a guy with a heavy metal pedigree to be the guitarist this time, and it shows. Your fun trivia fact with John Sykes obviously goes on to Whitesnake, and Blue Murder and all this cool stuff. But before Tigers of Pantang, he was in a little known band called Street Fighter, not the most original name. They made a 7-inch EP. It's one of those new wave of British heavy metal, kind of semi-rare records. Contrary to what you see on Metal Archives, I don't believe John Sykes played on the Street Fighter EP. I think he was long gone and already in Tigers before they wrote and recorded the stuff on that Street Fighter EP. So sometimes folks who are John Sykes completists, they try to dig up the Street Fighter EP. I don't think that's John playing on that. I could be wrong, but yeah, I'm pretty sure he was history before Street Fighter did their one very mediocre slab of new wave of British heavy metal vinyl. Anyway, so Sykes is in, the band is revving it up, and figured, okay, heavy metal's the thing. And it's worth noting, if people have forgotten or weren't around at the time, heavy metal was a big deal in the early 80s. It was becoming, sort of a more, mainstream, more visible kind of thing. You had bands, starting to break through, and they're bands we don't think of today as being so heavy. We're talking about bands like Twisted Sister, Quiet Riot, but that was heavy metal at the time, and it was gaining a lot of traction and a lot of visibility. So it kind of makes sense, for a band like Thin Lizzy to reinvent themselves a little bit and go in this harder, heavier direction. They weren't the only ones doing it. A couple of folks pointed out a minute ago, like, Scorpions. Now, here's a 70s hard rock band who navigated their way into the 1980s perfectly by becoming heavier.
Arguably, Judas Priest, where I mean,
yes, exactly. Priest's the other great example of that. Priest navigates their way into the 80s by getting the songs shorter, sharper, more metallic. Absolutely. So Thin Lizzy, it kind of makes sense they would go in that direction. And
Uriah tried to, like,
Uriah did try with Abominog, which is certainly not a bad album. A different lineup, very, I don't really know what Uriah Heep was up to in the late 70s. I know the early 70s stuff, and then you jump to Abominog, and there's this big question mark in between for me. But yeah, Thin Lizzy puts out this banger of an album. Thunder and Lightning, if anything, if I have a criticism of the song, it's almost too heavy for them at this point. It's like, it's so heavy compared to everything else they've done that it almost feels like they don't quite have a grasp on something this heavy yet. So yeah, it's impressive to see them just go.
That's why I like it, because it almost seems like they can't control it. They're like, "Oh fuck!" Oh!
It really. I mean, it's one of the few. It's one of the few times they were ever using profanity in the lyrics. It's just like, "God damn, this is heavy." We don't know how else to express it. This is again. We've quoted all kinds of really articulate and clever Phil Lynott lyrics all night. And here we are, goddamn hammer. It's like he doesn't quite know how to express this new, over the top heavy style.
So good. Yet. What's funny, what I should interject really
please do.
Is that I had this experience with hanging out with mostly Irish punks, but there are a handful of metal kids too. And I feel like when a different generation of people discovers these records, they have a different take on them. I know everybody universally that I know online or wherever else speaks incredibly positively about Thunder and Lightning. But when I was hanging out with those punk kids in Ireland, and I mean, I should link them to this at some point, share it with them, because I'm still in contact with a lot of these guys. They had all the records and they would stay up late, drinking beers and arguing about it. But like largely across the board, Renegade and Thunder and Lightning were the shitty records where they thought they were embarrassingly bad. Like they're like,
they're wrong.
Like
with this work,
I don't agree at all, especially with Thunder and Lightning. Like obviously, if it's my number 3 based on just the title track alone. There's one song that is, I think it's on Renegade. I didn't cover it because I fucking forgot like which particular track it is, and I'm not 100% sure it's on Renegade or this one. But it's like something about like friendship, and it's a little bit too much. It's like stand by your friend or some shit like that. Like I can't remember the track, and I don't write it down. But like that was that particular song that they were like clowning on really, really fucking bad. But yeah, I mean, I can see if you're completely, orthodox, like serious about fighting, and tracks like Rosalie and Jailbreak and everything, seeing them like try to like, oh, well, let's do the prog thing a little bit, see how that goes. Let's do heavy metal, especially because these kids were punk kids and loved Thin Lizzy and didn't really like a lot of straight up metal. Like they loved Thin Lizzy, but they weren't into, even really Metallica that much. They were into like a lot of like stuff like Chaos UK and shit like that. So it was kind of interesting that was like the one hard rock heavy metal thing they were really into. But yeah, they genuinely like kind of reviled like the last 2 or so records they did.
But, interesting.
I don't know.
But let's see. So yeah, we get after Thunder and Lightning. I think the album it settles in a little bit. There's not another track on the same Thunder and Lightning level after that, but oh man, is that a good track list? This is the one. It's a faster song. It feels a little frantic, but it moves along really, really
very
well.
cool chorus.
Yep. Very, very good.
Very well stately and powerful. We are chosen. We are.
And there's a lot of that kind of stateliness on this album. There is a very triumphant, anthemic thing going on with a lot of these tracks. You've got The Sun Goes Down is a beautiful song. It's again one of these dark, quiet, kind of simmering, moody tracks. That one covered by the German metal band Sinner on their Nature of Evil album.
Did not know that.
then you know the Holy War wraps up side one, and that's another one that's got that same kind of big, loud and proud, build up to it. It just
Killer lyrics. Oh,
yeah. Once again, yes. Often, will you adore me and all this, and yeah, just great. You get to side two, and I think it's John Sykes' only writing credit on the album, but he brought the song or a chunk of the song "Cold Sweat" in with him, and it was. I think it was the first single from the album, but it was one of the last songs put together for the album. Because again, I think Sykes may have come in a little bit late in the writing cycle, and it is one of my favorites out of Lizzy's
killer
catalog.
song. Would you okay? The way he puts those lyrics, it makes you think like he's going to a horse race, but I think he's going to score smack. I mean, stone cold sober, stone cold sweat. He's having the shakes. He's breaking out in sweats. He's gonna go. He's gonna go into the rat race with his money and get his fix.
That was definitely something that was going on with. It was really sad when I got to the point in those documentaries where they started talking about Phil, like, especially with his mother talking about it and stuff like.
Wow, yeah,
it was definitely happening at that point.
Yep. Sorry, I keep interrupting you, Al. I'm just very excited about this record.
It's a great album to be excited about. And it's this Cold Sweat's another good example. When you look at the lyrics, there's not that many lines written. It's in terms of the lyrics, it's actually very short. But again, it's got this whole encapsulated story, and you can, there's a couple of different angles you can take to it, but it still has that whole, it's got this amazing tension to it that, this guy is putting it all on the line, and maybe he's going to score big, and maybe he's going to blow it real big too. And even at the end of the song, where it sounds like, he's made out pretty well, he's already talking about taking it and just rolling it, just let it ride, take it to Las Vegas and just, blow it all. Maybe let it go for one more big score and do the whole goddamn thing over again. Cause you got to give it up and you can't quite do it. Killer track.
So he's describing the high, the hit.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't had it. I want it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to start all over again.
I took a big chance. I got it this time. And wow, let's try it again. Absolutely. Then you get to the one misfire on the album for me. Someday She Is Going to Hit Back. It's got to be one of the most awkward song titles. I'm looking at it on the screen. Someday is going to hit back. There's nothing articulate about. There's no rhyme. There's no meter. There's no way to enunciate that. It's just a mess of a song title. And as such, I never really remember the song very well. Then you get Baby Please Don't Go. Great song again. It's fast. It's got this tension where he doesn't want her to go. There's some amazing live versions of that song too, where the band just kind of lets it keep going. And Phil just pleading, baby, please don't go. Oh, no. And it's just, fantastic song. It closes with Heart Attack, which is okay, but after everything else on the album, it almost feels like, okay, and then it's over. Everything, Thunder and Lightning is just, bang, this huge noise that, grabs you by the throat. And then you go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight songs that are just glorious. And you wrap up. There's nothing wrong with Heart Attack, but I think at that point, I'm just so emotionally spent. I don't have any attention span left to give to Heart Attack. So at the end of the day, this is another one. I look at that track list, I'm like, man, why is this not ranked number 1? It could be ranked number 1 so easy. I've got it ranked second on this date in history. A solid A kind of album. It could be third, and Johnny the Fox and Black Crowes could both be ahead of it. And how could you argue against that? They have so many high quality albums, and to be doing it this late in their career when they're kind of picking a new direction a little bit and redefining themselves and just making it work instantly. That's really impressive and speaks to even with all the shit they're dealing with, it speaks to, how good they were at their craft. So Marty, I know you're chomping at the bit to go through this one too, so please do so.
I love this record. This record it just seems like a culmination of an entire, very productive, prolific career. Yeah, there's elements of heavy metal on here. I don't know if I'd still call it heavy metal. It is funny, Sykes is in the band. Like Thunder and Lightning, the heaviest song on here is written by the drummer and Phil. Again, the drummer is the guy bringing the heaviness to this stuff. And also, it's funny, we mentioned John Sykes. I think of the main riff for Thunder and Lightning, and I also think of the main riff for Still of the Night by Whitesnake. There's some similarities there. It's some similar. I mean, granted, Sykes did not write Thunder and Lightning, but he still played on it. Man, side one and Cold Sweat on side two, it's almost damn near perfect for me. Thunder and Lightning, like these guys have already stated, it's a unique ripper. It's just so intense, bowl you over type of song. This is the one, again, very strong chorus, very stately, very powerful. The Sun Goes Down on here is my favorite song. It's a very dark, brooding, sad song. It's an odd ballad. It's a ballad, but it's got very dark connotations to it. I love it. It's so good. And then Holy
it
War.
almost, sorry to interrupt,
Go ahead.
Marty.
No.
It almost goes all the way back to oh geez, sorry. Blanking on the song title from my, but it almost goes all the way back to one of the tracks from Vagabond, Little Girl in Bloom. That same, just, there's this kind of, something, this person, it sounds really pretty, but when you listen to the words, it's like, this person's not having a good go of it. So they're still, working that same trope all these years later and still just nailing it.
Yep. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. The Holy War. This is the one song I pulled up lyrics for. If you will adore me, bow before me and praise my name. If you place no God before me, then all I have is yours to claim. And if God is in the heavens, why did God let the children die? If you don't ask these questions, there is no reason why. We are chosen. We are one. We are frightened of no one. And no one will win this war. This is the way. This is the law. The whole song is so well written. The lyrics are very cool. And even The Sun Goes Down, very dark stuff going on here.
You also have to take it. Sorry.
Go ahead. No.
I want to just mention real quick. You also have to take into account Thin Lizzy was from Ireland. And I believe there were a few members that were from Ireland, from Northern Ireland, that moved down to Dublin during the Troubles. I think Gary Moore was one of them. But Phil Lynott was a devout Catholic and was real serious about being super into being Irish, and the whole separating from England thing. And this is when people are blowing shit up in the name of Irish independence, and people are dying and shit like that. So I think and that stuff was happening pretty heavy in the early 80s. So that is a lyrically, what I'm getting at is that's a lyrically heavy song for a very good reason.
Yeah. But the whole, I think that really Fighting might be the more consistent from start to finish album. But this, for me, the first 4 songs on this record, side A, is so good. So good. And they're showing a lot of different turns here. You got the heavy ripper right off the front. This is the one's more of a mid-pace stately, and then Sun Goes Down, dark ballad, Holy War, political statement. Every song, one after the other, is so well considered, and the pacing of the first side is perfect. It's great. It's it's them getting it right 100% on side A. Side 2, I like just as much. It's not as good as side A. Cold Sweat, great start. Awesome rocking song. Again, I like the fact that I'm thinking about, is he talking about gambling or is he talking about going out and get a fix? It's cool the way it's written. Someday she's going to hit back. Baby, please don't go is great. Bad Habits, Heart Attack. This is a number 1 for me all day. No problem at all. And I want to sit here and say I want to hear the album after this. It doesn't matter. Their next album could have a bunch of funk on it. It just doesn't matter. It's all depending on whatever, Phil's head is at the time. And, is he going to change guitarists again? What's going to happen? I don't see this lasting another album. I don't see them going in heavier. I don't see them becoming a metal band here. This still isn't metal to me. It's heavy as shit. It could be. So, and the funny thing,
songs on it are metal, but
there's some metal-ish songs on here for sure.
But I think there's songs that are metal going back to their fourth and fifth.
Sure.
records. So,
And how in the hell is this on Metal Archives? Why is this band on Metal Archives?
I've wondered that myself, and somebody told me one of the Metal Archives mods is a huge Lizzy fan, which is why they get included. There's one or two other bands like that too that feel out of place, because Metal Archives turns down tons of 70s, mainly 70s bands for a lot less. But a couple of them, Thin Lizzy being one of them, gets a free pass over there.
It's funny because I just say that because I've had interactions with those gentlemen over the years. I love their resource. It's amazing. I use it every fucking day. But I tried to get Nachachuan on there, and they're not metal enough. I'm like, what are you talking about?
What the fuck?
Their first album isn't, but after that, and I'm like, well, you've got their side projects, you've got other bands that are all acoustic. They finally put them on, but I had a lot like, nope, sorry, not metal enough. That's kind of the end of the discussion.
Are they not a metal?
But Lizzy, Thin Lizzy's on there. I was looking at it this week going, what? But they finally got on. But anyway, this is a crowning achievement record for me. I love this record. I turned friends on to Thin Lizzy through that record, and a lot of people from Northern Michigan, like I said, it's Boys Are Back in Town, Jailbreak. Those are the two songs. If you know Thin Lizzy, that is what you've heard. And and hearing an album like Thunder and Lightning, especially from a metalhead perspective, it's eye-opening because the songwriting after all this time and all these songs that have been written is still top notch. It's still top notch, and it's thought-provoking. The lyrics are deep. Phil never run out of ideas. He had a wealth of observational input over the years where he lives to write in experience and drug addiction and you name it. Favorite record. I love this band because of this record, and thankfully they've got a wealth of other 11 other albums behind it that are also quite good. So yeah, my number one. And I was reading before we kill it here, he died in what, 87?
86.
86. Apparently he had a treasure trove of songs written that Thin Lizzy after him tried demoing. They demoed a bunch of songs as Thin Lizzy after he was gone. I have not heard any of that stuff, but apparently there was an attempt made. I know nothing about it. Is it Alan or Pat? Do you guys know anything about that?
I don't know anything.
Oh, go ahead, Pat.
I don't know anything about it, but as a literal bonus track, I'm going to mention on this very best of Thin Lizzy dedication, there's a track that is exclusive to this release. It sounds like maybe one of the very last things they recorded. Somebody in chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but the song's called Dedication. And it's a nice send-off. Like, it's a really fucking good song. It's everything you'd want out of a Thin Lizzy song. Like, it's just, this was dedicated. It's very soulful, but very.
It's a good rocker.
It's a great rocking tune. Yeah, I'll just throw that out there.
Yep. Yeah. I've heard, Marty, that it was shortly before his death, so maybe like later half of 85. He was still in contact with a lot of these guys. He was still talking to Gary Moore. He did he was still doing. He did some more solo albums after Thin Lizzy disbanded. And just to wrap up the Thin Lizzy thread, again, I think they kind of, by the end of this album, and certainly by the time they toured for this album, everybody kind of knew this was going to be the end of the line. That guys were going to go their own way. Sykes, of course, went on to Whitesnake. Scott Gorham, and some of them felt like Phil might have been willing to do another Thin Lizzy album. Sykes, enjoyed it, but Scott was kind of ready to hang it up. So yeah, it was time for that era to end. But Phil was still active, trying to do some solo career stuff that never quite got off the ground.
He did some shit with Gary Moore too, didn't he? Some Gary Moore.
Yep. He started a band, I think they were called Grand Slam, but they never could land a record deal. But he was on Gary Moore had at least kind of a medium-sized hit in around 85 with a song called Out in the Fields, which is a good rock song, and Phil contributes to that song. That song was later covered by Riot on one of their 90s albums. And so even like in the later half of 85, Phil was talking to guys like Gary Moore and some of the others about possibly doing something. and I forget if it was according to Moore or maybe it was according to Downey or one of the other guys, that they did, some of them got together and kind of just hanging out in the backyard or basement, kind of demoing a few things here and there, trying out a few ideas. But then when Phil died in '86, the only tape copy of that stuff never surfaced. It was lost, with his estate being settled. So they're like, yeah, we have no copies of it. Phil had the only copy of it, and nobody knows what happened to it after he passed. So they were playing around with the idea of possibly doing something else. Some of the guys were into it. Don't know what configuration of people would have been on board, had it happened, but it was a possibility. And we should mention too, Pat brought it up earlier, we should mention that there is that final album, Life Live, that showcases that farewell tour with them bringing on a lot of the different guitarists from over the years were invited back on stage for stuff and all. So yeah, that one there with the kind of pale blue border on the cover.
Phil also played Lemmy's 50th birthday party. He was on there playing bass. Was it Ace of Spades or?
Oh, cool. No, I didn't know.
Yeah, is that the birthday party? It's a good video. Like, I have the DVD. It's got the cake with like the bullet belt coming out.
Yep.
Of it.
Yep.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay, Alex, I didn't know Primal Fear also covered that song. That's cool.
That's
so
one of my favorite eras of Motorhead too. It's like
and it kind of makes sense with Matt Sinner, especially over the past 10 years or so. A lot of the albums he's been putting out under the Sinner name have a real strong Thin Lizzy influence. Thin Lizzy is one of those bands a lot of times people will tell me, oh yeah, check out this band, they sound like Thin Lizzy, and I almost never agree. I don't know if it's because I just think of Thin Lizzy as being so unique, or others just can't measure up to them. But most of the time I listen to it, it's like, well, that's a 70s hard rock band. Is that what you mean? That they have a 70s kind of hard rock sound, but they don't sound anything like Thin Lizzy. Matt Sinner must be a huge Thin Lizzy fan, because a lot of the stuff he's been putting out on albums like One Bullet Left and Crash and Burn and is it Tequila Suicide, I think. There's always at least one or two songs that just they feel like Thin Lizzy cover songs. Once or twice I have to go and check, like, is this some deep cut from a Thin Lizzy demo or something, or a B-side that I'm just not familiar with? So it makes sense that he would have had Primal Fear also cover something that was related to Thin Lizzy without In the Fields.
Well, I think the big like elephant in the room, if you're talking about like a significant Thin Lizzy influence, is Lord Weird Slough-Egg. Maybe Marty would have more to add once he returns, but not necessarily like stealing anything other than the way they did their heavy riffs that had those. It's crazy because I don't think I would appreciate Thin Lizzy, and this is going to sound kind of pretentious, and I apologize, but I don't think I'd appreciate Thin Lizzy on the same level that I do with all those songs that I really love off those albums. They're definitely an individual song band for me rather than a whole album band, and maybe that'll change. But I don't think I'd have the same appreciation for them regardless if I hadn't been to Ireland and a friend of mine was obsessed with traditional Irish music, which was a huge pivot for the guy because he was into crust before that. He got really into the Pogues and it just went from there. But I'm glad he did, because I just wanted to see the world, and he dragged me to like this thing called the Milltown Malbay Festival on the west coast of Ireland, near the Aran Island, out past Galway, where people would, in this one small town, would just convert it's like a 3-block size town where every single shop and everything else everything got converted into a pub for the weekend. And there would be people just jamming on all these like Celtic jigs and reels, like this ancient music, with mandolins and accordions and stuff like that. And I was like, holy fucking, this is insane. Like, I'd never heard anything like it in my life. And, there's a lot of standards and it gets kind of repetitive, but it takes an amazing amount of skill to play. And I heard a few.
It's like bluegrass here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Very, very similar kind of deal. But you can hear that kind of stuff. And the thing is, the oldest of it is like especially with the I forget what they're called, but the type of drums that are with the dual-sided stick that they hit like this, like it's very warlike, a lot of it is, and it translates to heavy metal and hard rock very well. And I don't think if I hadn't seen that stuff played live, I'd have the same connection to Thin Lizzy. Like I still think Thin Lizzy is fucking awesome, but I think I got that kind of connection, and I mean they went on to influence Iron Maiden and tons of metal. So I think that piece is like really important, that it's connected to this sort of almost ancient music, you know. But I mentioned Slough-Feg while you were away. Because I know, I mean that influence is pretty apparent.
Yeah,
at least heavier end of Lizzy stuff.
You're welcome, Tim. That's what we're here for. Oop.
Well, cheers, Tim. Hope you find some albums that you like. If you poke around in their catalog, hopefully we've given you some directions to look in.
And I'm a recent convert as well. I mean, yeah, I've got 6 of their records, but it's within the last 6 years or so. You know, it's. Go ahead,
Marty. It's killing me. There's that band from Michigan that are like a trad doom band. I think you at least heavily distroed one of the records, if not released one of them. I can't remember their name.
Oh, Kruthu.
Thank you, Kruthu.
Yeah,
Kruthu
my buddy Matt's a drummer in that band. He was in the Glorious Dead for the first demo.
Yeah, they have a pretty strong Thin Lizzy influence from what I can hear.
You think so?
I think so, yeah. Like, I mean, more so than other stuff, but they have certain elements that remind me of Thin Lizzy. So
I guess I didn't catch that, but well, shit. And in closing, yeah, if you are just kind of a casual looker on Thin Lizzy, I mean, they're kind of a gift to music, and that's probably a cheesy thing to say, but Phil was an amazing songwriter, and if you don't get it, I understand, because they are different. They're a different band, but for rock, they're definitely a gem standout band. I don't know. You guys have anything to add before we jump?
No, they were fucking rad. That's it. That's all I got.
Like I said, I mean, they were, in ways a product of their time. They show you that, patience, pays off. That, can you imagine what would have happened to, this group of musicians if they had come up like, in 1986 and, got picked up by a major label? They had, one album, and if it didn't produce something, they'd have been, scrapped, and that would have been it. The fact that they, came up through the 70s, they were given time to find their muse and find their voice. And they produced as good a string of records as I think you'll find from any band of that era. And sometimes, again, I think they don't get quite as much love for whatever reason. They don't have the metal street cred of Scorpions, or, certainly not, the heaviness of Sabbath. They don't have the metallic, pedigree of Priest. A lot of people even, it's funny because I often kind of put them side by side with UFO in terms of, just, long string of consistently high quality albums. I know, lots of folks, who dig UFO and are just like, and Thin Lizzy. And they're just, it's almost like it's a dirty sock they want to hold a little further away. It's just like,
I'm the opposite.
Michael Schenker's great, and Thin Lizzy, let's just leave it over there with the common music that people would,
It's not common.
I agree. No, I don't quite get it. So it's like, but you dig UFO. How are you digging UFO and not, at least, to some degree appreciating Lizzy? Same with Blue Oyster Cult. People, dig a lot of, the Blue Oyster Cult stuff, and then just like, Thin Lizzy's too, what, proletariat for me, or too bourgeoisie, whichever the poor one is.
Yeah,
that would be the proletariat.
Yeah, that is too proletariat. It's like, well, I'm so sorry that you don't have to hold their song lyrics upside down in a mirror at midnight, by candlelight on the 3rd day of June to figure out what the fuck they're singing about.
And I think that element to their lyrics, that they're very relatable and real, is why there's, like, at least since turn of the century on, there's so many like punk rock types that are kind of getting into it, like. And
and I think for the folks that do get it, that's what they like.
My friend's band is an oi band, and they cover fighting, and it makes perfect sense. Instead of like Phil's vocals, a guy with like a growly, kind of like the singer from Slapshot kind of style, like fighting, fighting my way back, like real like roaring kind of oi singer stuff. It translates perfectly, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I'm to be real clear, I'm not slagging any of the other bands I've named. I think just, Thin Lizzy should be, right there, in the same paragraph as your Blue Oyster Cults and your UFOs. They're each doing something a little bit different. It's not that the bands are interchangeable. They're not copying or cloning one another. They're all doing their craft very, very well, a little different from one another. But I wouldn't slag one and elevate only the others. I think all those bands, did a lot of fantastic albums. Thin Lizzy just happens to probably be my favorite of the three, but that's just me. Others will have I like all three quite a bit. Scorpions too.
Yep.
Can't fuck with the Scorps, man.
Like all four. Priest also. I like all five. We'll be very inclusive here. I'm going to draw the line at Led Zeppelin.
I'm not a fan of Led Zeppelin either. I like about 3 songs in their catalog.
Couple of tracks, man. Couple of tracks.
Over the Hills and Far Away.
Greatest hits band.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, that's it. Everybody, please go check out a couple things to go check out. You need to go check out Ground Zero Salem. He's got a library of awesome content over there to watch. Also, check out Ground Zero Media. I don't know, Alan, if you put the link to his distro up. Maybe you did.
I do not. We will add that to
We'll add
the show notes here in backstage. Yep.
It's just groundzerosalem.com. Pretty easy.
Groundzerosalem.com. A very cool distro ranging from crust, punk, hardcore to metal, death metal, all the stuff. And Pat, we love you. You're a friend. You're a friend of the channel.
Thanks
it's
so
good
much
to
for
see you
coming on.
back.
Thanks for having me again, guys. It's been a
Hell
while.
yeah. And
Come hang out.
you need to check out Let's Talk Metal. He's got a very cool couple hour chat about collecting with a Swedish collector. I can't remember his name. I'm sorry.
That's right. Yeah, Christian. He's an old collecting buddy from Sweden. He's got a ridiculously big collection of rare U.S. And North American metal.
Yep.
And is a super nice guy. He's just one of the nicest folks you could ever hope to deal with.
It was a good show. I'm about halfway through it.
Thank you.
Very,
Glad you
very
enjoyed
good
it.
stuff. Go check out Let's Talk Metal. And also, you want to hear more about Thin Lizzy, there's going to be another stream on gas masks and hand grenades. I don't know exactly when that's coming. But yeah, go check it out. I'm sure it's going to be a very, very deep dissection for sure. Next week, show notes. We've got Wednesday. We are talking about the album club, Spawn of Possession. The album is called Cabinet. Monday, there will be a review with Melanie from Melanie Loves Death Metal. I can't remember what she submitted. I have to edit it this weekend. Friday's up in the air. Anybody else have anything to plug before we jump?
Nope. Let's see. Melanie and Simon are coming on in a couple of weeks to discuss favorite albums of 2023 so far. Banger TV did that today or yesterday. But if you want to hear our take, Melanie's take, and Simon's take, join us 2 weeks from tonight, and we will do the same thing. We had the idea first. They copied us.
That's right. Those guys are scamming us. Anyway, everybody in the chat, thank you. You rule. We appreciate you as always. Pat, Ellen, don't hang up. We're out.
In the words of Phil Lynott, get out of here.
Get out of here.
Do I make myself clear?
God damn.